There is a place where the known world trembles, where the horizon dissolves into mist, and every breath seems to draw in something older than memory. Imagine standing at the edge of the desert as twilight bleeds into night, the air still, the sand whispering underfoot. They say that in such places, the veil between realms is but a thin fabric, fragile as a spider's web. To the untrained eye, all seems peaceful, but beneath that silence, something immense and ancient listens. You have crossed into a liminal space, a borderland between the world of humans and the world of the Djinn. In this invisible threshold, time no longer flows as we understand it. Each grain of sand carries centuries of forgotten prayers, and each gust of wind hums with voices unseen. The ancients warned that these moments of stillness are not empty. They are invitations, open doors through which the unseen can reach back. Before we proceed deeper, allow yourself a breath. And while you do, share with us in the comments from where you join this journey. Because tonight, across oceans and continents, you are part of this same thin line between seen and unseen. Welcome to Echoes of the Old World. If this is your first step into the unknown, consider subscribing and staying with us as we explore the realms beyond the ordinary. Ahead lies a world built from stories older than nations, whispered by wanderers and scholars alike. The journey begins not with light, but with shadow. In Arabic tradition, the Djinn are not mere ghosts or demons, nor are they the playful spirits of fantasy. They are beings formed from smokeless fire, made before humankind and dwelling in a world parallel to our own. The Quran itself refers to them as a race created long before Adam, sentient and free-willed, capable of great good or terrible malice. The desert, the ocean, the deep ruins of forgotten temples, all are homes to them. But even among their kind, one stands apart: the Marid, the sovereign, the untamed embodiment of elemental force. Imagine a creature vast as a storm, its form not bound to a single shape, but shifting like water, like mist, like a living current of memory. The Marid is power distilled. In the hierarchy of Djinn, it stands at the pinnacle, far above the fireborn Ifrit, the cunning shaitan, the elusive Jann, and the predatory ghoul. To speak its name is to acknowledge a spirit that commands oceans, manipulates the tides of destiny, and weaves illusions so perfect that entire kingdoms could drown in them. Yet, the Marid is not merely destructive, it is a reflection of creation's raw potential, both magnificent and merciless. The ancients feared the Marid not because it was evil, but because it was sovereign, impossible to chain, impossible to predict. When one emerged, the world itself seemed to listen. The skies darkened, the air thickened, and the old storytellers whispered that in those moments, the boundary between man and spirit grew dangerously thin. They said that those who carried arrogance into the sea, who challenged the mystery of the deep, would sometimes vanish, their names erased by the same tides they mocked. The Marid, they claimed, listened for such folly. As legends evolved through centuries, the Marid became both warning and wonder. Sailors crossing unknown waters left offerings before embarking: drops of oil, small coins, whispered prayers cast onto the waves. Not all sought protection, some sought power. For in the lore of the Middle East, there are tales of those who dared summon the Marid. It is said that if compelled correctly, a Marid can grant wishes, altering the very fabric of reality in ways beyond human reason. But such control comes at a price beyond imagination. The Marid does not serve, it negotiates. Every wish wrested from it bends the laws of balance, and for every gift, there is a debt. The old Magi knew this truth and spoke of the exile of sorcerers who underestimated their own pride. For how can a mortal bind the ocean or command the storm? The Marid's obedience is temporary, a performance of tolerance before the inevitable retribution. And when that moment comes, it is silent, absolute, and total. To understand the Marid, one must first accept a truth that humanity resists. Power is not moral. It simply exists. The Marid is not good or evil. It is primordial. Where humans see salvation or punishment, the Marid sees only equilibrium. It raises the drowning and drowns the proud with the same indifference with which the river flows to the sea. And in this indifference lies its terror. Because the Marid does not hate us. It simply does not need us. Imagine being before such a presence. No face, no mercy, no malice, only vast awareness. The air thickens as if the sea has risen around you, pressing against your skin. The world silences itself as though sound would offend its patience. And then, perhaps from somewhere unseen, a voice. Not a sound, but a vibration through your bones, asking what it is you truly desire. Most who hear it are never the same again. But the question remains, why fear what cannot be defeated? The ancient poets offered the answer in stories, because to know the Marid is to know the limits of human dominion. In its reflection, one sees the arrogance of kings, the hubris of those who thought they could rule the elements or rewrite fate. The Marid reminds us that even our strongest pillars are built upon shifting sands. It is the humility of survival disguised as myth. Across regions, the image of the Marid shifts like the sea itself. In some tales, it rises from the deep as a being of mist and sapphire light, its form barely contained by the waves. In others, it walks among humans disguised as a traveler or wanderer, testing hearts and revealing desires buried deep. There are whispers of fishermen offered fortunes for small acts of loyalty, and of rulers losing entire empires for a single careless wish. Always, the theme remains. The Marid gives what you ask for, but takes what you fail to guard. As centuries passed, these tales merged with the mythology of the genie in the lamp, the charming, wish-granting spirit known today through countless retellings. Yet, beneath the polished glow of modern tales lies the shadow of the true Marid, untamed and sovereign. The lamp is not a prison, but a symbol. It reminds us that power confined will find a way to burn through steel and silence alike. The Marid endures because it speaks to something ancient in us, the part that gazes at the horizon and feels a pull toward the unknown. It is the embodiment of temptation and reverence, of the longing to shape the world as we wish it to be. But to gaze upon it, even in imagination, is to risk remembering that some powers are not meant to be possessed, only respected. Tonight marks only the beginning. Ahead lies a descent into the labyrinth of the Djinn's world, where fire and wind, earth and water conspire in forms older than humanity itself. But before we journey deeper, pause once more. Let the desert wind brush your face, or the ocean's rhythm remind you of time's slow breathing. You stand at the threshold. Beyond it waits the Marid, the most powerful of all Djinn. And as you continue with us through this series, subscribe and remain close, for the veil between worlds grows thinner with every story we tell. The world of the Djinn is not a place of clear borders or simple laws. It is a vast and layered reality that overlaps our own, filled with beings of fire, air, and shadow who move unseen, yet ever near. Ancient scholars describe their kingdom as an empire, without geography, where cities of invisible flame rise above deserts and oceans alike. To enter that realm, even in thought, is to wander through history's oldest fears and earliest fascinations. For among the Djinn there is order. a hierarchy as ancient as creation itself, built upon of their birth and the weight of their power. Imagine for a moment that you could see it, a court beyond human sight, where beings of shimmering heat and whispering wind kneel before those who have ruled since time began. This hierarchy is not one of obedience alone, but of resonance. Each class of Djinn embodies a fragment of the universe's primal elements: earth, fire, air, and water, reflected through the mirror of consciousness. The highest among them is the Marid, the sovereign of the deep, followed by the fiery Ifrit, the cunning shaitan, the free-roaming Djinn, and the spectral ghoul that dwells where mortal light cannot reach. At the center of this cosmic order stands the Marid, the wielder of waters and the keeper of mysteries submerged in the abyss. The Marid's power flows like a current through the unseen world, binding tides and moonlight alike. It commands the essence of life itself, for all beings are born from water. Yet its splendor is paired with solitude, for none can equal its stature. Only the Ifrit dares to approach its magnitude, beings of fire that burn not for warmth, but for dominion. The Ifrit are the tempests of deserts, the infernos of judgment, and the architects of vengeance in many human tales. The Ifrit serve as the second tier of the Djinn hierarchy, a reflection of unrestrained will. They are the emblems of rebellion, burning with defiance yet bound by old cosmic law. In Muslim tradition, some Ifrit are said to have defied divine order, becoming punishers or wanderers cast among humankind. Their natures are restless, like the desert winds that spawn them. Unlike the Marid, who guard their realm with distant pride, the Ifrit often intervene in mortal affairs, shifting their forms to deceive or to bargain, whispering to those who seek forbidden wisdom. It is from their lineage that the most dangerous sorceries are said to have been taught. Below them stand the shaitan, whose name echoes from the same root as the word for demon. Yet this term does not simply mean evil. The shaitan embody resistance and arrogance, the eternal struggle of creation against submission. They exist as the tempters, the voices at the edge of reason, reflecting humanity's internal wars. In myth, they are the sparks that ignite conflict, not out of spite, but out of cosmic necessity. For if the Marid symbolizes divine distance, and the Ifrit fiery punishment, the shaitan personify humanity's flawed reflection, power-seeking purpose. Moving lower, one finds the Djinn. They inhabit the edges of the human world, often unseen but never far. The word itself may stem from roots meaning something hidden or veiled. The Djinn represent the ordinary spirits of the unseen, capable of kindness or harm depending on how humans treat their world. They live in deserts and oases, beside wells and ruins, their laughter said to carry through the winds of Arabia at dusk. Many travelers still speak of vanishing shadows and gleaming eyes beneath the dunes. The Djinn watch, listen, and sometimes help the lost find their way if approached with respect. They are the stray guardians and forgotten allies in the lineage of the Djinn. At the base of this invisible order lies the ghoul. These are the remnants, the fragmented echoes of what once might have been spirits of greater stature. The word itself has crossed languages, becoming ghoul in later tales. But the truth behind the name speaks of isolation, a form that feeds on fear, hunger, and neglect. The ghoul inhabit graveyards, wastelands, and empty cities, taking shapes that bring despair. They are reminders of what becomes of power left unbalanced. In the hierarchy, they are not nobles, but cautionary figures. Their existence stands as an omen that even a creature born of fire can fade into dust if corrupted by emptiness. This divine architecture mirrors human societies more than coincidence allows. The Djinn hierarchy reveals more about humanity than it does about them. The Marid mirrors kings, distant and supreme, yet cursed by isolation. The Ifrit mirrors warriors and tyrants, burning with glory and disobedience. The Shaitan mirrors philosophers and tempters, weaving conflict from thought. The Djinn mirrors wanderers and peasants, creatures of survival. The Ghoul mirrors decay, the inevitable end of those who forget their origin. In their hierarchy lies both warning and wisdom, an ancient allegory for balance. In some traditions, the hierarchy is not fixed. Some Djinn rise or fall by deed, not birth. A Djinn that commits itself to darkness may harden into a Shaitan, while a Ghoul that repents through centuries might ascend toward clarity. This belief mirrors the human condition, a cycle of fall and redemption, echoed in the unseen realm. It tells us that power is fluid, that even among spirits, purity and corruption are choices, not destinies. Those who have glimpsed this truth through dreams or trances describe a shifting realm where light and fire dance in patterns no mind can record. Yet this hierarchy is not simply folklore. It is philosophy. It illustrates the fragile equilibrium between divine order and chaos, between obedience and freedom. The Djinn's layered kingdom expands not outward, but inward, each division a reflection of cosmic understanding. The Marid sits as the eternal sea, its stillness both sacred and dangerous. Around it, the lesser Djinn swirl like currents of thought and emotion. Humanity exists at the shoreline, forever drawn toward that deep, yet terrified to descend. The lines that separate these realms are thin, often breached by prayer, ritual, or accident. Long ago, scholars wrote that each kind of Djinn governs a domain within. The Marid guards water and wind, the Ifrit fire and stone, the Shaitan thought and temptation, the Djinn earth and sound, the Ghoul decay and shadow. Together, they maintain the unseen balance sustaining reality. But if one overreaches, storms, droughts, and madness follow. Thus, ancient mystics saw the hierarchy not as tyranny, but harmony, an orchestra of elements forever tuning itself through conflict. Only when the Marid's voice grows too loud does the harmony verge into chaos. Humans have always sought to classify what they cannot control. The hierarchy of the Djinn is perhaps our attempt to define mystery, to give name to the forces that both sustain and destroy us. But understanding the order of spirits does not grant dominion over them. It only reveals our longing to belong in a universe that remains indifferent to our fragile reign. Next time you walk under desert stars or hear the ocean's murmur, imagine the hierarchy whispering through it. The Marid in the depths, the Ifrit in the firelight, the Shaitan in your thoughts, the Djinn in the rustle of sand, and the Ghoul at the edges of your dreams. Each listens, each reflects, each reminds you that to understand the Djinn is to see yourself refracted through eternity's mirror. Beneath the endless horizons of the sea lies a depth older than creation itself, a realm where light fractures and time dissolves. It is there, in the ever-shifting pulse of the tides, that the Marid reigns. To those who have listened closely to the whispers of waves, its name is not spoken with fear, but with reverence. The Marid is the ocean personified, boundless, unpredictable, and eternal. Born of the first waters, it is the living echo of primordial chaos from which the world was shaped. Imagine yourself standing upon the shore just before dawn. The sea is a vast mirror, silent except for the heartbeat of waves against stone. You feel the tremor of something beneath, an awareness older than memory itself. The air tastes of salt and myth, They say that when the Marid stirs, the ocean's breath changes, currents shift, storms awaken, and the very rhythm of the earth responds. It is not a creature in the way mortals understand creatures, but an intelligence that wears the sea as its body and the tempest as its voice. In the mythic hierarchy of the Djinn, the Marid stands alone as the sovereign of fluidity and power. It draws its strength from the world's waters, oceans, rivers, springs, and storms. Water is its element, both its shield and sword, a medium that erases form and yet gives life. The ancients believed that when the Marid moves through the deep, the fish vanish and the sea becomes calm, as though paying homage to its master. But when rage overtakes it, whirlpools form like dark eyes gazing into the abyss. To face it is to confront the embodiment of the unknown. The Marid is often described as beautiful and terrible, its presence both mesmerizing and unbearable. Some stories speak of it appearing as a towering figure of liquid light, with eyes that reflect entire storms. Others claim it can take on the illusion of human form, shimmering as if carved from moonlit water. But its true essence is never solid. When ancient mariners swore they saw a man of waves walking on the sea, their descendants called it madness. But the old women of coastal villages knew better. They said the Marid reveals itself to those who stand too long between fear and awe. Its domain, unlike that of the fiery Ifrit or the wandering Djinn, is not confined by boundaries or seasons. The Marid belongs to all waters, the still pools of oases, the rushing rivers that carve through mountains, and the deep, starless trenches of the Earth's belly. Even in the deserts, where mirages shimmer and phantom lakes appear under scorching suns, some swear the Marid's reflection passes through the illusion, a reminder that water, like spirit, is never truly gone. To their minds, the Marid is the symbol of life's persistence and death's inevitability. Legend tells that the Marid's temperament mirrors the sea itself. At times, it is serene and wise, guiding lost voyagers to safety or revealing hidden treasures of wisdom to mystics who seek enlightenment. But provoke it, and its wrath becomes unimaginable. Entire fleets have vanished under skies that moments before were clear as crystal, erased by sudden tempests no mortal prophet foresaw. Sailors prayed not for wind or calm, but for the Marid's indifference. To be ignored by the sea was the safest fate one could ask for. Its relationship with humanity has always been one of wary fascination. There are tales of kings who sought to chain the Marid's will, forging talismans infused with salt and sapphire. Most failed, consumed by the very element they tried to command. Yet, a handful of myths speak of those who succeeded, wise men who knew that power cannot be seized, only bargained. The Marid, unlike lesser Djinn, respects cunning and courage. To summon it without arrogance, to speak without pleading, is said to earn its curiosity. But even then, a single careless word can turn its curiosity into contempt. Among the scattered scrolls of old Arabic folklore, the Marid's jewel shines through as that of teacher and destroyer. To fishermen, it is a guardian spirit that blesses the sea with abundance when honoured with offerings of sweet scent and whispered verse. To sorcerers, it is a gatekeeper of forgotten knowledge, one who knows the language of tides and the secrets buried beneath ruins drowned by time. The Marid teaches through consequence. Those who seek its gift must endure its mirror, a reflection of their own greed. In distant tales, even the mighty King Solomon is said to have bent the Marid to his will. Using his ring of divine command, he forced many Djinn, including the proud sea spirits, into service. They built temples, raised cities of coral, and carried treasures from the depths. Yet, even Solomon, the wisest of monarchs, was said to have approached the Marid with caution. It obeyed yes, but its obedience was cold, its eyes gleaming with eternal resentment. When the king's words faltered, the Marid's laughter rumbled through the world like distant thunder. Therein lies the lesson. No mortal command can extinguish the will of a being born from chaos itself. The Marid also lives on in symbolism. To mystics, it represents waters paradoxical, life-giving and merciless, reflective and unfathomable. In each of us, they said, sleeps a fragment of the Marid's essence, a depth we seldom explore. To gaze upon still water is to meet one's own mystery, to see the churning depths hiding under calm surface. That is why so many ancient rituals involved water as purification. To approach the Marid's essence was to confront one's own soul. Even centuries later, the Marid lingers in cultural echoes. Modern traditions recite fragments of its myth, often reimagined in art or story as the genie of the lamp, a tamed echo of an untamable being. Yet the older legends remain clear. The Marid is sovereignty incarnate. It is not a servant, but a mirror of power. The moment when humanity gazes upon the infinite and mistakes awe for control. The lamp's wish-granting myth is but a softened reflection of an older truth. What the Marid gives, it can also take away, and the ocean never forgets a promise. There are those who claim to feel the presence of the Marid even today. On lonely shores after storms, they describe hearing a deep hum beneath the water, a pulse like a sleeping heart. Some who vanish at sea are said to have followed that sound, drawn into a kingdom that has no name, where the walls are tides and the throne is silence. Whether one believes or not, the warning remains clear. To stand before the Marid is to kneel before the magnitude of itself. It does not punish for cruelty, nor reward for piety. It simply exists, enduring, unpredictable, eternal. So when you next hear the sigh of waves under the moon's cold light, remember this truth. The ocean you see is not empty, but aware. Its depths are not void, but filled with memory. Somewhere, beneath your reflection, the Marid dreams. And in those dreams, the sea waits for the moment when our world drifts too close to its own reflection, when once again, water will speak. Fire is a language of defiance. It devours, transforms, and leaves behind nothing but the memory of itself. Within the vast order of the Djinn, the element of flame gives birth to beings whose is both radiant and ruinous, the Ifrit and the Shaitan. To speak their names is to summon the oldest echoes of pride and punishment, two reflections of the same unyielding will. If the Marid is the sea's majesty, then the Ifrit and Shaitan are the desert's fury, relentless, scorching, and unrepentant. Picture the desert under the weight of noon. The rocks shimmer as if breathing, the air burns against the skin, and every sound seems swallowed by the heat. It is said that within that inferno walks the Ifrit, a towering flame given form, its body shaped from smokeless fire, the same substance from which all Djinn were born. To the human eye, it might appear as a figure of pure energy, flickering between shadow and brightness, its voice like the crackle of dry wood in an endless blaze. Unlike the ethereal Marid, who glides over water, the Ifrit burns to exist. Its realm is creation through destruction. Legends describe the Ifrit as warriors and monarchs among the fiery spirits. They live in tribes beneath molten caves or in cities of heat shimmering beyond mortal perception. Their world, hidden under the skin of volcanoes and deserts, mirrors our own in structure but not in mercy. For the Ifrit value strength above all virtues. To them, the measure of worth is endurance, the ability to survive the storm, tolerate pain, and command respect through fear. Their civilization is one of endless jewels and burning crowns. a hierarchy forged through flame and willpower alone. The temperament of the Ifrit reflects the essence of fire itself, passionate yet cruel, radiant yet consuming. Some stories speak of Ifrit who fell in love with mortals, their affection as intense as it was destructive. Others tell of kingdoms cursed by an Ifrit's anger after a broken vow. The ancients taught that to summon an Ifrit required not bravery, but understanding, for one must recognize flame not as an enemy, but as a mirror of one's own hunger. A careless sorcerer, they warned, does not command the fire, he becomes its fuel. Ifrit were not always hostile to humankind. In the earliest tales, they were guardians of hidden treasures or keepers of sacred passages between worlds. Some served prophets or saints, bound through divine will rather than sorcery. Yet, even in servitude, their eyes burned with unspoken resentment. They are creatures forged from rebellion, their existence a constant resistance to submission. To command an Ifrit is to borrow wrath, and wrath never remains borrowed for long. Where the Ifrit embodies the destructive beauty of fire, the shaitan personifies its corruption, the spark that chooses to defy rather than to illuminate. The word shaitan, meaning adversary, carries the weight of spiritual rebellion. While not all shaitans are Djinn, many arose from their ranks, the fallen and the defiant, who rejected the divine harmony of their kind. Some traditions speak of them as beings twisted by envy and pride, their flame turned inward until it consumes their own essence. They exist not merely to destroy, but to challenge every boundary set before them. Within the hierarchy of spirits, the shaitan represents the idea of conflict as an eternal force. They are the whisperers in the human mind, sowing doubt, feeding ambition, urging defiance against fate. Their war is not waged with swords, but with thought. Where the Ifrit's fire burns the body, the shaitan's corruption burns the soul. Together, they form the two faces of rebellion, one elemental and immediate, the other intellectual and perpetual. Their existence serves as a warning of what happens when creation forgets its source and power forgets its purpose. Yet, to dismiss them as evil is to misunderstand their place in the cosmic tapestry. Without the shaitan, obedience would breed stagnation. Without the Ifrit, creation would lack the impulse to evolve. They are the necessary conflict that keeps the universe in motion. The ancients understood this paradox well. For every prophet that spoke of divine order, there was also fire that tested its purity. To encounter an Ifrit or a shaitan, whether in dream or legend, is to meet the burning edge of existence, the test every soul must face. Some mystics wrote that both beings were reflections of the same agony, exile. The Ifrit burns for belonging, forever exiled from divine light, while the shaitan burns for dominion, forever exiled from humility. One is the fire outside the gate, the other the fire within. Their tragedy is that their rebellion is eternal. They cannot return, nor can they truly destroy what cast them out. So, they wander through desert storms, through spiritual voids, endlessly seeking purpose in chaos. In folklore, the boundaries between them often blur. Travelers in Arabia wrote of fires seen roaming the dunes at night, lights that danced like willful spirits before vanishing into the wind. Some said they were shaitans testing the hearts of men, tempting them toward pride. Others said they were Ifrits, guiding the lost toward hidden wells to remind them that mercy survives even in fire. These dual interpretations persist because both truths coexist. The flame that destroys is the same that warms and protects, and there are tales of ancient pacts where human rulers sought alliances with these fiery beings. Those wise enough approached them not with chains, but with reverence. The agreements were never equal. Fire obeys until it chooses not to. It is said that great civilizations rose and fell under such fragile accords, their legacies etched into glass-like sands born of burned stone. The lesson endures. Dominion over flame lasts only as long as humility endures in the heart. In a broader sense, the Ifrit and the Shaitan represent the human struggle against its own. One is external rebellion, the need to act, to destroy and rebuild. The other is the inner rebellion, the desire to control destiny, even at the cost of one's soul. They are not merely creatures of myth, but reflections of the same forces that shape civilizations and individuals alike. The poet who defies convention, the leader who challenges fate, the outcast who burns rather than submit, all echo the spirit of these fiery beings. Their legends end not in victory or defeat, but in remembrance. Fire always leaves its trace, on stone, on story, on the soul. To understand the Ifrit and Shaitan is to glimpse the creative contradiction that dwells within every act of rebellion. They remind humankind that power without purpose consumes, and resistance without wisdom isolates. The eternal struggle between defiance and harmony burns in them as it burns in us. And as long as the world turns, their flame will continue to flicker at the edges of thought, illuminating and devouring in equal measure. Between the blazing skies of the desert and the cool breath of dusk, there exists a realm of motion unseen. It is here that two ancient kinds of Djinn wander, forever caught between light and decay, the Jann and the Ghoul, while the Marid commands the ocean and the Ifrit rules the flame. These two dwell nearer to the mortal world, their stories laced with empathy and fear alike. Theirs is a world of thresholds, half in shadow, half in form, and in that borderland, they reflect humanity's most fragile truths. The Jann are spirits of freedom and transition. Unlike their mightier counterparts, they hold no fixed dominion over any one element. Instead, they represent movement itself, the airy wanderers of the unseen, forever traveling between oases, ruins, and forgotten places. To the Bedouin who told their stories under sprawling canopies of stars, the Jann were not monsters, but neighbors. It was said that every lonely well or abandoned caravan path had its guardian from among them, a silent watcher ensuring that those who crossed the desert did not vanish without memory. Imagine the endless dunes rolling under silver moonlight. The world seems still, yet every grain of sand holds life unseen. A flicker of movement ripples across the horizon, and what first seems like a heat mirage slowly turns to form, a figure both human and not, its eyes reflecting starlight like water over obsidian. You feel no threat, only awareness, as though the landscape itself had turned to study you. Such is the old description of the Jann, beings unseen yet present, made of air and dust, existing where isolation meets wonder. Their power is subtle, their purpose uncertain. In ancient lore, the Jann were among the first Djinn to mingle with humans. They were said to understand the frailty of flesh, sharing the same instincts of survival and the same fear of extinction. Unlike the Shaitan, they did not whisper temptation, nor did they scorch the earth like the Ifrit. Instead, they watched, listened, and sometimes offered aid. To travelers lost in the desert, a whispering wind that guided them to safety was often explained as a Jann's mercy, yet their kindness was not unconditional. Those who insulted the land or ignored its sacred rules risked vanishing into sandstorms that never ended. The true duality of the Jann lies in their reflection of human morality. They are capable of benevolence, but not bound by it. A Jann might guide a wanderer one night and mislead another the next, simply because the world's balance required it. To them, Good and evil are illusions born of perspective. The desert knows no sin, it only knows survival. Thus, the Djinn are sympathetic yet merciless teachers, reminding mankind that harmony is not kindness but equilibrium. While the Djinn inhabit the space between safety and wilderness, the Ghoul dwell beyond the edge of civilization entirely. Their name carries terror across centuries. The Ghoul, the Devourer, the Forgotten One. In the earliest tongues, it meant something that seizes or takes away. A fitting description for spirits that haunt forsaken lands and abandoned graves. The Ghoul is the shadow that lingers after the fire dies, the echo that follows a lonely traveler home. It is not fury that drives them, but hunger. A hunger not for food, but for remembrance. Legends tell of plains littered with bones, where the wind hums through hollow skulls, places where the boundary between death and the invisible world thins. There, the Ghoul rises, taking on the forms of animals or humans to lure victims deeper into solitude. Old poets describe them as pale wanderers with eyes like dying embers, forever searching for what they lost when they were cast out of the Djinn's higher ranks. For many believe that the Ghoul were once Djinn, stripped of grace after forsaking the natural order. Their fall mirrors mankind's own descent through greed, arrogance, or despair. The Ghoul's presence reveals a darker truth within Djinn lore, that even immortality decays. Fire fades, water erodes, wind exhausts itself, and so too do spirits. The Ghoul embodies the corruption of eternity, the cost of existing without purpose. Their hunger for life is less about consumption and more about longing. In the villages that dot the edges of the desert, people once told stories of ghouls who approached travelers disguised as relatives or friends, begging for a name to remember. Those who gave it freely often found it stolen, their voices lost forever to the whispering night. Yet, not every tale paints them as monsters. Some tribes believed a ghoul's curse could be lifted by genuine compassion. To feed one out of pity rather than fear was said to heal the fragment of its lost self, turning torment into silence. Such myths speak more of mankind's yearning to redeem than of any true salvation. The ghoul is both our nightmare and our reflection, a reminder that even in shadow, there is the faintest memory of light. The relationship between the Djinn and the ghoul is one of mirror and ruin. The Djinn roam freely, embodying motion, curiosity, and the breath of existence. The ghoul remains bound, trapped in repetition, unable to escape the hunger of its own emptiness. Together, they form the spectrum of the unseen that connects life and death, hope and loss. One protects, the other consumes, but both dwell in the same silence, the stillness that lies beneath all creation. To understand them is to grasp an old truth of folklore, that the unseen world does not judge but observes. In the desert's endless expanse, neither man nor Djinn can escape the gaze of time. The Djinn reminds humankind to honor the land, to respect the unseen currents of fate. The ghoul warns of the cost of defiance, of what happens when reverence turns to arrogance. Their myths are not separate stories, but two halves of one meditation on humanity's fragile place between heaven and dust. Even today, echoes of their legend persist. Travelers who cross empty sands at night still claim to feel a presence pacing alongside them, unseen yet protective, a Djinn perhaps. Others whisper of figures glimpsed near graves under full moons, their silhouettes still as stone, until the wind stirs them back into nothingness. These stories remind us that even in our modern world, old boundaries remain. The Djinn walk in every breath of wind before dawn. The ghoul waits in every shadow where memory fades. And between them, humanity continues its endless pilgrimage through sand, spirit, and fear. there are forces in this world that do not obey human language. The sea, the wind, the deep roar of the earth. These are wills older than creation's memory. From within them rises the Marid, the sovereign master of elemental dominion. To understand its power is to acknowledge the futility of control itself. The Marid is not a creature that uses the elements. It is the elements awakened. Each wave that crashes, each drop that falls, carries a trace of its consciousness, watchful, patient, immeasurable. The ancients said the Marid's domain was water in all its forms, but their wisdom extended further. For in truth, the Marid's mastery was not limited to one element alone. Its influence rippled across all that flowed: wind, mist, and even the pulse of living blood. Water was only the visible body of its rule. Its true command lay in motion, in the ceaseless rhythm that binds all forms of matter together. Where the Ifrit raged and consumed, the Marid shaped and endured. It did not burn nor tear, it overwhelmed. Its strength was not fury, but inevitability. Imagine a storm building upon an open sea. The horizon darkens, the air thickens, and the stillness becomes suffocating. You feel it before you see it, the weight of pressure, the invisible pull of the world drawing inward. That is the essence of the Marid's presence. Sailors, throughout centuries, believed that when storms appeared without warning, it was because the Marid had awakened, its emotions translated into wind and lightning. Where it passed, ships splintered not from wrath, but from proximity to pure power. The Marid's does not distinguish between destruction and creation. Both are consequences of its being. Foremost among its abilities is hydrokinesis, the capacity to command water's every form. It can call tides to rise in rebellion, or calm seas into mirror-like stillness. Rivers can change their course under its will. Deserts can bloom where its whisper lingers. And entire islands can sink when it withdraws its favor. To the Marid, water is neither servant nor tool, but memory, a living network connecting all existence. The same element that sustains life can erase it effortlessly, a paradox that the Marid embodies perfectly. Ancient mystics often describe the Marid as capable of shaping the atmosphere itself. It could summon rain from a cloudless sky or dissolve an army's breath in humid air. In one narration, a Marid was said to have spoken through mist, its voice resonating like thunder underwater. Another legend claimed that when it danced, lightning wove its shape across the heavens. These were no mere displays of might, but forms of expression, the Marid's language, written in the lexicon of natural phenomena. When it spoke, the world listened. Beyond physical control, the Marid commanded visions and illusions. In the tales of sailors who vanished upon calm waters only to reappear days later, delirious and awestruck, the Marid had shown them worlds made entirely of light and shadow. Its illusions were not tricks of perception. They were reconfigurations of reality, bending the senses and the soul alike. Those who dared look into its shimmering form claimed to see their past and future intertwined, their lives reflected like distorted ripples across an endless surface. Some saw paradise, others oblivion, but none saw truth as it was. The Marid's illusions revealed what one most feared to know. To mortals who sought to harness its strength, the Marid offered terrible bargains. Water binds through exchange. To receive, one must give. The greatest sorcerers of ancient kingdoms learned this truth too late. Some offered their blood, others their dreams. A few offered silence, the vow of never speaking its name again. Those who broke such bonds vanished into the nearest body of water, their names drowned and their stories erased. The Marid's power demands equilibrium. What it grants with one hand, it claims back with the tide. But not all manifestations of the Marid were wrathful. Some myths tell of it purifying poisoned lakes or restoring balance after mortals desecrated sacred shores. When approached with reverence rather than greed, it became a bringer of creation, a rejuvenator of worlds. The Marid's force is neither moral nor neutral, it is contextual. Like the sea, it reflects the soul that calls to it. Those who approach with arrogance encounter catastrophe. Those who come with humility find revelation. The water mirrored truth, and the Marid, ruler of waters, enforces that reflection. What made the Marid distinct from any other Djinn was its capacity for adaptation. Fire consumes itself to persist, but water endures through change. The Marid could survive anywhere its element could exist, in clouds, in mists, in the blood of creatures, or the tears of mourning. There are folk tales claiming that a Marid once hid within a single drop of water resting on a caliph's hand, whispering prophecies through its reflection. Whether myth or allegory, the meaning remains consistent. The mightiest power often exists in the smallest vessel. Its mastery extended beyond matter into emotion. Water carries memory, and the Marid, ruler of that memory, could read the echoes within the human heart. It sensed grief as rainfall, fury as torrents, love as calm streams. In some stories, it offered release from sorrow, dissolving pain like salt in the sea. But it could also amplify emotion until it became unbearable, driving mortals to madness or enlightenment. Its gift, therefore, was always double-edged. The very connection that gave humans comfort could also destroy their sense of self if they lingered too long in its presence. Throughout time, human fascination with control over has mirrored its fascination with the Marid. Kingdoms fell chasing its essence, alchemy, ritual, and prayer, all seeking to hold what cannot be owned. Yet the Marid waits, undisturbed, for those who understand instead of command. Its power is an invitation to humility, to recognize that to touch the element is to be dissolved by it. Every wave that breaks upon a shore is a whisper of that same truth, a reminder that we are made of what the Marid rules. Perhaps the greatest secret of the Marid's power is not what it can do, but what it teaches. Dominion is illusion, harmony is truth. The Marid's command of the elements is not tyranny over them, but unity with them. It reminds those who listen that power without balance is ruin, and control without understanding is folly. When we marvel at the strength of a storm or the silence after rain, we hear its quiet lesson, that the elements obey no one, yet serve all. The Marid, in all its terrible beauty, remains the eternal custodian of that law. Power is never silent. It murmurs beneath every human ambition, whispering promises that rarely end as they begin. Those who sought to control the Marid soon discovered that mastery is not possession, but peril. For the sea's sovereign resists dominion, bending only long enough to teach its intruders the cost of arrogance. The tales of the Marid's curse are as varied as the coastlines themselves, yet all lead to a single truth. What cannot be owned will one day turn against its captor. In the old kingdoms of the Arabian coasts, stories were told of magi who conjured forth the Marid to harness its elemental might. Armed with scrolls of sacred ink, they chanted words older than stars, summoning the ocean's will into their presence. At first, their commands seemed to work. Waves obeyed, the weather bent, empires prospered from rains once denied to them. But power borrowed from the deep has a memory. It returns, not with vengeance, but with balance. One by one, those who commanded the sea vanished beneath it, their palaces found flooded, their scrolls washed clean of every word. The Marid does not rage, it restores equilibrium. To understand this curse, one must first understand its temptation. The Marid embodies perfection of control, and humans, in every age, are drawn to mastery of what frightens them most. The sea is life. It is death. It gives and takes without pattern. To summon the Marid is to challenge that uncertainty, to demand predictability from chaos. But chaos, like water, adapts. The Marid bends only long enough to reflect the desire that summoned it, showing each conjurer their own folly, as if in a mirror. That reflection alone has driven many mad. In one tale handed down by coastal mystics, a scholar from a distant land sought knowledge of immortality. Through forbidden rites, he called the Marid from beneath the black depths of a moonless bay. The spirit appeared not as flame or shadow, but as a figure woven from silver mist and liquid light. It offered immortality in exchange for silence. The man accepted, vowing never to speak again. For years he lived untouched by age. Yet with time, he realized that silence is not peace but isolation. Unable to cry out, beg, or sing, he became a prisoner of eternity. Immortal, yes, but drowned in quiet despair. Such fates are the Marid's form of justice. Unlike the Ifrit, whose wrath is explicit, the Marid punishes through fulfillment. It grants exactly what is asked, leaving mortals to suffer under the weight of their own desires. When kings asked for endless wealth, they found their treasuries flooded by seawater, their gold dissolved in salt before their eyes. When lovers sought eternal devotion, they drowned together, embraced beneath waves that would never part. The Marid's curse is not the denial of wishes, but the ruin that follows their granting. Ancient priests warned that no human voice could truly compel a Marid. The incantations preserved in temples were not chains, but invitations, agreements easily broken. The Marid did not serve, it humored, and when the ritual ended, the price began. In some accounts, these prices were subtle. The sea grew restless, crops withered, children were born with eyes reflecting the horizon. In others, the punishment was more direct. Entire cities swallowed by tides that came without storm. The Marid's lesson is constant. Control over is an illusion, and illusion exacts its toll. Even the legendary King Solomon, known across faiths as the ruler of spirits, faced the peril of control. Though he commanded legions of Djinn, even his seal-bound spells could not break the Marid's inherent freedom. One story tells that when Solomon ordered the Marid to raise a palace beneath the sea, the creature obeyed outwardly, but turned the foundations illusory. The palace was completed, gleaming with coral and crystal, yet it existed only under the Marid's will. When the king's focus wavered, the structure dissolved back into foam, leaving him standing in the shallows, trembling not from fear, but humility. No power, not even divine appointment, could tame what was born of the ocean's heart. Sorcerers who sought the Marid were often undone before they even spoke its name. To summon it required purity of purpose, and almost none possessed it. The ritual demanded fasting for 40 nights, meditation by moving water, and the surrender of one's most beloved memory. Few understood why. The memory became the offering, the sea's exchange for clarity. But when the Marid was called, it appeared bearing that same memory distorted, transforming affection into ache, comfort into regret. The summoner's will faltered under the weight of their own longing, and the element reclaimed what it had lent. The greatest danger in the Marid's curse lies not in destruction, but seduction. The creature's calm, unlike the Ifrit's fire, invites trust. It speaks slowly, its voice measured, its promises sincere. Many who faced it left convinced they had triumphed, until their world began to unweave at the edges. The Marid works with inevitability, reshaping lives like tides reshape the coast. Its vengeance is time itself, patient and precise. Those who think themselves untouched soon find their descendants bearing the weight of their bargains. The curse transcends generations like an echo deepening through water. Yet not all tales end in despair. A legend from the island shores tells of a fisherman who unknowingly freed a Marid trapped within a glass vessel. Expecting fury, he instead offered gratitude. In a moment of humility, the fisherman refused any reward, asking only that the sea remain calm for his people's livelihood. The Marid, moved by his simplicity, honored the request, vanishing into mist with a voice that said, "Peace lives in surrender." For as easily as it curses, the Marid may also bless, if met not with control, but understanding. Such is the duality of the Marid's curse. Every command is a mirror, every wish a test. It punishes not through anger, but through clarity, forcing mortals to face the truth of their desires. The ocean's gift is never free, and its silence is never empty. Those who seek to control the Marid learn that power, once reflected, consumes its reflection. And as the old sailors warned to those who dared petition the sea, beware what you ask beneath the moon's eye, for the tide always remembers, and the Marid never forgets. In every age, there are tales of kings who whispered to spirits, who bridged the gulf between the divine and the elemental, yet none loom larger than Solomon, the wise monarch whose command over the Djinn became legend. His story stands as both miracle and warning, a portrait of a ruler who held dominion over what no mortal should control. Through him, humanity glimpsed what it meant to command the unseen, to bear the weight of voices made of fire, wind, and water. Among them, none tested his authority more than the Marid. It is said that Solomon's gift did not begin with conquest, but with humility. Before he was king, he prayed for understanding that transcended power, and in doing so, he was entrusted with a divine seal, the ring that bore the name of the Creator. Within its mark lay the authority to command the Djinn, not by force, but by divine recognition. With it, the gates between worlds opened, and the unseen revealed themselves. Legions of spirits who served under his rule to construct cities, temples, and monuments beyond comprehension. In their ranks, the Marid stood apart, immense and radiant, a being whose submission was neither simple nor total. The Marid obeyed Solomon's commands only under the seal's gleam, its vast pride contained by divine decree. Witnesses spoke of the ocean boiling as the Marid rose before him, the air trembling with the sound of distant thunder. The king spoke calmly, his words neither loud nor fearful, and the creature bent, luminous and vast, its presence half vapor, half wave. It built palaces beneath the waters, carried jewels from the seabed, and guarded treasures no mortal hand could touch. But every act of service came with resistance. A hesitation that reminded Solomon that even divine command had limits when faced with true elemental will. For as much as the Marid obeyed, it also listened. It studied the king who dared to rule what once ruled freely. Among the spirit's kind, whispers grew. Was Solomon divine, or merely a clever man wielding borrowed authority? The Marid sought the answer not through defiance, but through observation. It watched him pass judgment, lead wars, and compose verses of wisdom. Eventually, the spirit understood that the seal did not make Solomon powerful. It made him accountable. His gift was not mastery, but burden. The command of thousands weighed upon him like iron set upon the soul. The legends tell that Solomon's court was a confluence of worlds, Djinn of flame and storm stood beside mortals of flesh and faith, each sworn to maintain the balance between creation and chaos. The Marid served there, dormant yet restless, like a tide that could not forget the pull of the moon. On certain nights, when the moonlight struck the palace domes of Jerusalem, some swore they heard waves crash far inland, echoes of the sea answering its captive sovereign. In those moments, even Solomon lingered in silence, aware that dominion brings obedience, but never peace. One story tells of a test between the king and the Marid, an encounter that defined the limits of human command. Desiring to test Solomon's wisdom, the Marid appeared before him disguised as a mortal sage and asked, "What gives a ruler true authority?" Solomon answered, "Compassion." But the Marid pressed further. "And what happens when compassion becomes weakness?" The king's gaze lowered, and he spoke. "Then the ruler no longer serves heaven, but himself." The Marid vanished, and when it returned, its storm had calmed. It had learned, through that exchange, that even those who control must one day submit to the weight of what they wield. The king's seal, an object both revered and feared, symbolized the fragile alliance between humanity and the unseen. It could command the Ifrit's fire, still the shaitan's deceit, and even compel the Marid to speak. Yet the seal's true power lay not in subjugation but in balance. Those few who later tried to imitate it, crafting their own sigils or rings, found only ruin. For the language that bound the Djinn was not written. It was intention made manifest. Without purity of purpose, the command failed, and the conjurer faced what Solomon had managed to endure: the unrestrained will of ancient spirits. The weight of this dominion aged Solomon faster than his years. Each decree required focus enough to hold the balance of worlds. The Djinn obeyed not from loyalty, but from the echo of divine law, and that law demanded tireless vigilance. In one account, during the building of his great temple, Solomon dismissed his court, weary of the noise of beings too powerful to silence. He stood alone upon a cliff overlooking the sea, the ring heavy upon his hand, and asked the heavens, "Can one who commands all things ever rest?" The wind answered softly, carrying with it the laughter of the Marid, only when he learns to release them. That moment marked the beginning of his decline. Legends say the ring was stolen. Some say by a shaitan disguised as a servant, others say by fate itself. And for a time, Solomon wandered the earth stripped of his power. The Djinn, freed from the seal, scattered back to their domains. The Marid returned to the sea, rising in triumph, filling the horizon with silver storms. Yet its triumph was hollow. The sea was vast, but solitude heavier than servitude. Without the king's voice, the world seemed quieter, the air less alive. So when Solomon later reclaimed his ring and his throne, the Marid came once more, not as servant, but as witness. The old texts say their final meeting was neither of command nor rebellion. The Marid rose from the waters one last time, carrying with it the salt-slick crown it had guarded through the years of the king's exile. It offered it without words. Solomon, in turn, removed his ring and placed it upon the crown, setting both into the sea. "Power," he said, "belongs to none who desire it." The Marid bowed, and the sea stilled. In that silence, two forms of sovereignty, divine and elemental, acknowledged each other. So ends the tale of Solomon and the Marid, a story not of domination, but of respect. It echoes a truth that survives across ages. To command is to be bound, and to release is to reign. The weight of authority lies not in control, but in restraint. And those who forget that lesson, as the legends warn, will find themselves drowning not in water, but in their own thirst for power. The Marid, still lurking in the depths, remembers. Every legend begins with a spark of longing. Humanity has always reached toward the unseen, craving miracles that silence its limits. The story of the genie's lamp, so bright and familiar today, was once a far darker fire. Behind the whimsy of 3 wishes and playful magic lies the ancient echo of the Marid, a being whose boundless power shaped the first tales of wish and punishment. What we now picture as a harmless spirit confined within polished brass was once an oceanic sovereign, bound by cunning and sacrilege. In the cradle of sand and salt, before empires or books, the people of the coast believed that every great desire came with a guardian. Where the sea met the shore, the waves carried whispers, promises from entities that existed between worship and wrath. The Marid, supreme among Djinn, was said to appear whenever mortals attempted to force destiny's hand. Its power to grant wishes was formidable, but never generous. Beneath every miracle hid a test, a riddle meant to measure the truth behind the desire. From this ancient fear of bargains was born the fable that would one day become the story of the lamp. But the lamp was never a prison in its first telling. It was a seal, a vessel forged by those who sought to contain the remnants of a Marid's promise. When the spirit's contract with a mortal ended, its essence, too volatile to fade, was drawn into a vessel of metal and runes. The object became heavy, humming with restrained energy, its glow faint as moonlight under deep water. To open such a vessel was to tear a page out of creation itself. Those who dared to touch one were warned to speak. No wish they did not intend to pay for. The words hung in the air as both invitation and curse. These early vessels were said to be shaped through rituals passed down by Solomon's Magi. It is told that when the king dispersed the Djinn that served him, he ordered the most dangerous among them, chiefly the Marid, to be confined within relics of purpose, scattered where humans would not easily find them. Yet greed has always been the compass of mankind. Fishermen, traders, wanderers, all stumbled upon such objects in time, mistaking their stillness for safety. Thus began the long metamorphosis, from divine warning to folk legend, where horror softened into wonder. The first transformation of the lamp story occurred along the trade routes that bridged Arabia, Persia, and North Africa. As tales traveled, myth merged with market, and the Marid's haunting grandeur became the genie's polite servitude. The ocean's vast indifference turned to clever wit. The deadly wish became comedy. Yet through these changes, fragments of truth endured. The 3 wishes, symbolic in number, mirrored the Marid's triad of balance: to give, to test, to reclaim. Each wish was not granted freely but bound to a cost proportional to its depth. The first revealed human need, the second exposed human, and the third exacted recompense. The modern image of the genie, the shining being coiled in smoke, emerging from confinement, is a distant echo of those older myths. The prison of metal is no longer a seal, but a stage. Listeners in medieval markets delighted in the inversion. Instead of the Marid mastering the human, man now commanded the Djinn. It was a soothing reversal of fear into fantasy. By shrinking the sea creature into a container, storytellers pacified the chaos of the unseen world, turning terror into amusement. But within those lighter versions lingered traces of discomfort, hints that control over magic was never as simple as it seemed. To the mystics, the wish was never external. It represented an inner temptation, the desire to shape the world in one's image without earning the right to do so. The lamp became the heart, the vessel of potential, and the Marid within symbolized the shadow of the will. Each wish granted by the spirit was a mirror reflecting the summoner's own truth. Greed expanded into abundance that suffocated, love twisted into possession, and power revealed its hidden loneliness. The stories warned that no matter how bright the miracle, it would always illuminate the darkness of its asker. One of the oldest surviving tales tells of a fisher enslaved by the promise of the sea. When he released a marid from its lamp, blinded by dreams of fortune, the spirit offered 3 wishes in return. With the first, the fisher asked for wealth. The sea gave him pearls until his home sank beneath their weight. With the second, he pleaded for glory. The people crowned him king, but his subjects vanished one by one, swallowed by storms. Desperate, he used his final wish to undo his mistake, and in doing so vanished as well, leaving the lamp abandoned on the shore. The sea claimed both giver and receiver, erasing the line between them. The fisher's tragedy endures not for its cruelty, but its lesson. Each wish fulfilled by the marid carried the same burden: transformation. To wish is to admit lack, and to have that lack filled without merit is a wound disguised as mercy. True power, the old sages said, lies not in the speaking, but in the silence before it, the recognition that desire must be tempered by understanding. The lamp, far from a gift, is a threshold, a trial masquerading as miracle. Only those who resist its temptation earn its protection, for the marid respects restraint above all intentions. As centuries passed, the lamp and its imprisoned marid faded from sacred texts into the gentle glow of folklore. Merchants told the story as entertainment, poets recited it as metaphor. Yet some still claim that deep in the ocean or buried beneath lost ruins lie vessels humming softly in the dark, each a bound echo of a marid's unfulfilled promise. And should one ever open such a relic, they say the air will thicken, cold and aware. A voice, ancient and patient, will emerge. The sea itself, asking once more what it is you truly desire. The genie's lamp, beloved symbol of fantasy, is thus a reflection of human arrogance tempered by longing. It is the myth of control wrapped in glittering metal, a mirror in which desire meets divine peril. Behind every playful fable of wish and wonder lingers the shadow of the marid, a deity disguised as servant, waiting for the next voice foolish enough to believe it commands the tide. For in the end, every wish is a wave, and every wave, no matter how gentle, remembers what it once was: the boundless power of the sea. Long before the printed word spread across empires, stories rippled through the air like the movement of wind across sand. Among them, few captured the imagination of the world like those gathered in the 1001 Nights. These tales, born of Persia, Arabia, and India, are more than entertainment. They are vessels carrying fragments of older, elemental truths. Through their woven verses, the marid emerges once more, half forgotten yet vividly alive, a spirit of water and will, glistening behind every wish, curse, and storm. In these stories, the marid is not merely a phantom of the sea, but a symbol of power misunderstood. Its presence reflects the human desire to bridge the divine and the mortal. Where other jinns serve quietly in corners of legend, the marid dominates the narrative with grandeur and volatility. To the listeners of candlelit courts and desert encampments, it embodied both the beauty and terror of creation unrestrained. The storytellers described it as vast, blue like the deep, its voice pitched between thunder and whisper. Those who met it faced not a monster, but a test of balance between ambition and humility. Perhaps the most famous of these tales is that of the fisherman and the genie. In it, a poor fisherman hauls from the sea a brass jar sealed with Solomon's mark. When he opens it, smoke pours forth, taking the form of a marid who declares its intent to destroy him. The fisherman, trembling, does not fight. Instead, he uses wit to trick the marid back into confinement, sealing the jar once more. The story captures a timeless truth. Intellect may outlast power, but mercy redeems both. Even when the monstrous spirit is freed again, it grants the man wealth and protection, transforming an act of terror into a tale of mutual respect. The layers within that encounter reveal the cultural understanding of the married. It is not evil by only proud, and like pride itself, it becomes destructive only when unchecked. The fisherman's victory is not born from force, but empathy. He faces the married as an equal in intelligence, not as prey before a predator. The story's endurance across centuries owes itself to that dynamic. Humanity's relationship with the supernatural is neither war nor worship. It is recognition. The married mirrors our own contradictions, mighty yet trapped, wise yet impulsive, bound to serve yet yearning to be free. Other tales speak of kings and sailors who sought the married's favor to reshape their fates. One such legend tells of a ruler who wished to calm the raging sea that devoured his fleets each year. He prayed to the horizon until a figure rose from the waves, taller than his palace gates, crowned in foam, cloaked in salt. The married listened to his plea, and with a gesture, stillness fell across the ocean. But the calm lingered too long. Trade withered, rain ceased, and the people starved. When the desperate king called the married again, it replied simply, "No ocean should be mastered twice." From that day on, sailors left offerings at the shore, not of fear, but of respect. Within the ever-changing tales of the 1001 Nights, the married's character transforms. Sometimes it is a villainic captor, chaining princes in underwater palaces of glass. At other times, it becomes a reluctant ally, guiding heroes through impossible trials. In one tale, a prince lost at sea is carried by a married into the depths, where he beholds kingdoms gleaming with coral and luminous fish, ruled by spirits older than the world. The married offers protection but warns, "What wonders you see belong not to you." The prince later returns home, burdened not by treasure, but reverence. Such stories teach that awe is richer than possession. In the voice of Scheherazade, who spun these endless tales to preserve her life, the married symbolizes both blessing and peril entwined. Her retellings transform terror into wisdom, command into conversation. Through her, the married's narrative becomes not one of conquest, but of coexistence. She reminds her listeners, and her king, that curiosity toward the unknown can heal rather than destroy. The married's might, therefore, transcends physical destruction. It becomes allegory for transformation, for the reconciliation between logic and myth, order and chaos. Every retelling of the married story across centuries reshaped its meaning for its listeners. To some, it was a warning, a reminder that power unearned corrodes and freedom unbounded devours. To others, it was aspiration, the dream of touching divinity, even for a moment. The boundaries between prayer and story blur in these ancient nights. The married ceases to be a creature and becomes a metaphor for itself, untamed, noble, indifferent, and eternal. In every splash of ink and spoken word, storytellers kept alive the question of whether mankind was ever meant to master the forces it admired. The persistence of the married in collective memory speaks to a truth deeper than myth. Oceans change, languages fade, yet the figure of the watcher beneath the waves endures. Modern retellings may show the genie as playful, as a companion born from light and mist, but flickers of the ancient married remain. When modern audiences laugh at the mischievous genie who grants foolish wishes, they are unknowingly echoing the laughter of the sea, timeless and knowing. For every joy, there remains depth. For every fantasy, a shadow. The married hides behind both. What makes these stories immortal is not the magic they contain, but the mirror they hold up to us. The Marid's presence in the 1001 Nights reveals how cultures across ages sought to make peace with mystery. It teaches that the unknown need not be conquered to be understood. Power, like the sea, becomes sacred only when treated with respect. Each telling is a prayer that we might remember humility, that the waves do not exist to serve the shore, but to remind it of motion. The Marid endures there, humming beneath the horizon, waiting for the next tale, the next listener who dares to dream by the sound of water. There are places in the world where perception fractures, where sight and sound no longer obey the rules of the waking mind. Such boundaries are called the liminal realms, and among these thresholds, none is as elusive or as perilous as the domain of the Marid. It is not a kingdom of gold or stone, but of sensation, a vast ocean of consciousness where thought becomes tide, and memory drifts like silt through the depths. To enter it, even in imagination, is to surrender the anchors of the human senses. You do not see the Marid's world, you feel it, a slow unraveling of familiarity replaced by awe. The ancients believed that the line where sea meets sky was not an illusion of distance, but a boundary between realities. Beyond it, they said, was the Marid's realm, a place where the laws of the living dissolved into echo and vibration. To mortals, it appeared through dreams or moments of delirium, when water reflected more than just light. The surface of the sea became a mirror of both worlds, and those who gaze long enough sometimes claim to see figures moving beneath it, not swimming but thinking. It was said that the Marid's realm could be touched only by those whose will matched its balance, neither fearful nor arrogant, but poised between surrender and defiance. Imagine yourself standing alone upon a shore at dusk. The air thickens until even your heartbeat sounds foreign. Each gust of wind feels deliberate, as though the world itself is breathing in time with you. The waves no longer lap, they listen. If you close your eyes, you can sense an awareness gathering around you, vast and patient, measuring the rhythm of your pulse. This is how the Marid's world introduces itself, not through vision, but immersion. It does not step toward you. It expands, drawing your thoughts like currents into its unseen core. To those few said to have crossed the boundary, the first sensation was not fear, but weightlessness. Sounds lengthened into texture, colors deepened until they were felt rather than seen. The seafloor glowed faintly with patterns resembling language, though no scholar ever succeeded in translating them. In this place, direction lost meaning. Up and down became interchangeable concepts as the spirit of water rewrote every rule. It is here that the Marid dwells, not as a being, but as a presence diffuse and eternal. To perceive it fully would shatter the human mind, for it exists in too many forms at once: a current, a whisper, a thought remembering itself. The liminal realm of the Marid is neither paradise nor abyss. It reflects the inner state of whoever enters. For the serene, it is luminous, filled with slow-turning lights that pulse like heartbeats. For the troubled, it becomes tumultuous, waves colliding in soundless fury, voices overlapping in endless echoes. Many mystics described it as the waiting place of creation, where the world's memories sleep between being and oblivion. Some speculated that when the Marid speaks, it does so through this landscape, shaping tides and tempests not for warfare or wrath, but as communication with the universe itself. Every storm, they said, is a fragment of dialogue between water and sky, spoken in the language of force. Though no one knows how the Marid chooses who glimpses its world, patterns emerged in folklore. Sailors on the verge of drowning often spoke of calm visions before their final breath, cathedrals of blue light beneath the sea, figures watching them with pity. Desert wanderers, lost to mirages, claimed to hear the ocean calling, and in their last moments saw themselves reflected on invisible water. These stories were not treated as tragedy, but as transformation, for to some, death by the sea was not an end, but an invitation. The Marid's realm did not punish, it absorbed, turning boundaries into belonging. In ritual tradition, those seeking vision of the liminal world followed strict preparation. They would fast for 7 days, avoiding both salt and flame, before sitting beside still water under the full moon. Chants would summon neither gods nor Djinn, but silence itself, until the surface broke without wind. Then came the test. The seeker had to submerge a single hand into the water and wait, feeling for the subtle pull of something vast beneath the calm. If the water warmed, the Marid listened. If it chilled, the attempt was a warning. None could remain long between those sensations. To linger was to lose the sense of where self ended and the sea began. Some texts claimed that those who survived the experience returned altered, their senses forever attuned to the unseen. They spoke of hearing waves in their sleep, of tasting rain before it fell, of eyes that reflected not the sky, but deep currents of unknowable movement. Ordinary life became unbearable to them, for reality felt muted beside what they had witnessed. Some became prophets, speaking in riddles. Others vanished again, drawn back toward the horizon, yearning to merge with the serenity they once touched. The Marid's realm does not let go easily. It calls like a melody half remembered, until the mind bends toward it willingly. In more philosophical circles, scholars debated whether the liminal realm existed externally or within the soul. Some argued that it was the ocean's dream, glimpsed by consciousness that resonated with its rhythm. Others believed it was a metaphor for enlightenment, that the Marid's dominion was the state of perfect awareness reached when self and reconcile. Both explanations converge on one idea, that the Marid's world and ours are not separate places, but layers of the same existence. One is dense and visible, the other fluid and eternal. To stand at the threshold of that realm is to face the fragile truth of existence, that stability is illusion, and boundaries are stories told by minds that fear dissolution. The Marid's liminal kingdom erases such fears, teaching through immersion rather than instruction. Its lesson is subtle, but infinite, that all things move, all things merge, and every drop once belonged to a sea beyond memory. Those who return from its depths seldom speak coherently, but their silence carries reverence. They have seen the vast patience of the ocean's thought, the intelligence that flows without need for form. To them, the world no longer feels like a solid place, but a dream held gently afloat. So, when you watch the horizon blur into mist, when a quiet moment by the shore seems to stretch beyond time, remember what the old wanderers said. You are standing at the gate. The Marid's realm is closer than the next breath. You need not summon it or dare its waters. It already watches through every reflection. It is the hush beneath every storm, the thought before speech, the silence between two waves. In that silence, if you listen, the Marid waits. Power, when ancient and unrestrained, always carries two faces. The Marid, sovereign of water and mystery, reflects this eternal duality more vividly than any other being of the unseen. To invoke its presence is to summon both the kindness of rain and the violence of flood, the mercy of the tide and the vengeance of the storm. For centuries, storytellers and mystics alike have struggled to define its essence, each discovering too late that it cannot be confined to words. The Marid is both creator and destroyer. its temperament as fluid as the element it commands. The benevolent side of the Marid reveals itself rarely and only to those who approach with reverence rather than desire. It is said that in times of drought, when entire villages wither under an unrelenting sun, certain elders would walk into the sea, carrying offerings of incense and polished seashells. They would sing verses to the deep, not demanding, but entreating. Sometimes the air trembled, and the waves rose in gentle rhythm, as if acknowledging the plea. When rains finally came, the people whispered that the Marid had heard and chosen mercy over indifference. In these moments, it was not a monstrous being, but a guardian, preserving the fragile equilibrium of the earth. Such mercy was never tender, only patient. The Marid's compassion lacks warmth. It is impersonal, ancient, and vast. To it, granting life is as natural as reclaiming it. This detachment terrified those who first encountered it, for its benevolence demanded humility beyond comprehension. Legends spoke of fishermen pulled from drowning waters by invisible hands, returning home unharmed but forever marked with strange calm. Their eyes held the weight of calm seas, and their voices carried the subtle tone of tides receding. They had not been saved out of love, but because their survival maintained the order the Marid cherished. Yet its terror is as breathtaking as its grace. When angered, or even startled, the Marid's demeanor can shift in an instant from stillness to annihilation. Whole fleets have vanished beneath calm horizons that concealed its wrath. Villages built too close to sacred coasts were said to disappear, replaced by unbroken stretches of sand the next morning. These were not acts of hatred, but of correction, a rebalancing of the delicate web between the human and the elemental. Those who speak of the Marid's fury always emphasize its silence. Even destruction comes without roar. The storm breaks like whispered judgment, leaving behind only awe. It is this paradox that makes the Marid both feared and worshipped. Unlike the hellish temper of the Ifrit or the deceptive cunning of the Shaitan, the Marid embodies impartial justice. It punishes not morality, but imbalance, to harm its waters, to disrupt the sanctity of creation, or to act with arrogance before its vastness invites ruin. To live in harmony with the sea, to understand one's place within its rhythm, invites blessing. It is neither moral nor amoral. It is principle made conscious. Every wave that rises and falls is an expression of that law. To defy it is to defy itself. In folklore, countless tales describe mortals caught between those two faces. A merchant tempted by greed tosses effigies of silver into the sea, demanding prosperity. The Marid rises, granting him immense wealth, but with it, arrogance. Days later, the tides swallow his ships, his fortune reduced to nothing but memory. Another story tells of a widow whose tears called the Marid from the depths. Moved by her despair, it sent fish to replenish her nets each morning until her death, never revealing itself again. These extremes are not contradictions, but reflections of one truth. The Marid mirrors humanity's intent, magnifying both virtue and corruption. Philosophers in the old courts often argued that the Marid's duality revealed a lesson about the human soul. Within every person lies the same dual potential, to create or destroy, to heal or ruin. The sea, they said, is the heart made visible. It holds calm and rage without separation, and both give meaning to the other. The Marid, as manifestation of that truth, becomes less a creature and more a divine mirror. Its blessings require surrender, not devotion, for humility is the only language it understands. To converse with such a being is to confront oneself without illusion. Religious records sometimes recast the Marid as a test sent by the divine, an embodiment of one's faith measured through storm and stillness. Sailors prayed for favorable winds, but they also prayed for courage to face divine judgment should the waters surge. When their ships drifted unharmed through tempests, they did not celebrate. They whispered thanksgiving to the unseen eye of the ocean, knowing survival was grace, not triumph. Every voyage, then, was both a journey across the world and into the self. The dual of the married ensured that no sea was ever truly safe, nor entirely hostile. In Sufi mysticism, this dual temperament became a metaphor for enlightenment. Water, after all, cleanses, but also consumes. The seeker, like the married, must dissolve attachments and re-emerge purified. The ocean's dual voice, gentle lapping and violent waves, represents the dialogue between divine mercy and discipline. To fear the married is to misunderstand it. To admire it uncritically is to court ruin. Its wisdom is balance incarnate. It teaches through contrast, bestowing illumination, not in words, but through the rhythm of existence itself. Artists of later centuries reinterpreted this duality in poetry and song. The married was depicted as both muse and menace, a guide to creativity and a symbol of hubris. Writers compared the act of creation to invoking its presence, beautiful when respected, devastating when abused. The sea teaches only patience to those who listen, wrote one ancient poet, captured perfectly in the dance between beauty and destruction. In that way, the married ascended from myth to philosophy, from entity to eternal concept. Ultimately, the married's duel reveals something profound about power itself. Benevolence and terror are not opposites. They are twins that share the same breath. To separate them is to misunderstand their unity. The married gives life with one hand and reclaims it with the other, maintaining equilibrium in a universe that leans ever toward chaos. To stand before it, whether in myth or vision, is to realize that awe and fear are one sensation. And perhaps that is why humanity continues to tell its stories. Because within the married's turbulent heart lies the oldest truth of all, that creation and destruction are not enemies, but partners in eternity. In the shadow of deserts and along the whispering coasts, the relationship between humanity and the Djinn has always been defined by both reverence and dread. These beings, older than empires and as invisible as breath, were never simply monsters or gods in the eyes of the people who lived among their myths. They occupied a space in between, guardians, tricksters, destroyers, healers, depending on how one treated them. Understanding the culture that surrounded them is to glimpse the ancient rhythm of coexistence between the mortal and the unseen. At the center of that delicate balance stood the married, the Djinn most feared and most venerated. For early Arab tribes, the world was alive with unseen inhabitants. Every gust of wind, every shimmer of heat, every flicker of flame possessed meaning. Before the rise of organized religion, these forces were addressed through ritual, offerings, and restraint. The Djinn were among them, but the Marid, ruler of the waters, held a distinct position. In a land defined by scarcity, the sea was both lifeline and abyss. Fishermen prayed to the currents before setting sail, murmuring verses into the tide, so that the Marid would bless their voyage and not claim it. A small portion of their catch was always returned to the waves in gratitude, an echo of humility in the face of forces beyond control. Rituals of invocation varied from tribe to tribe. Some used incense of amber and myrrh, believed to please the Djinn of higher rank. Others preferred silence, approaching sacred wells or desert springs without speech, for words were thought to attract attention one could not dismiss. The Marid was not summoned so much as invited. Those who sought its guidance bathed in water mixed with salt and moonlight, their prayers whispered through cupped hands. To succeed meant harmony, to fail meant disappearance. Villagers spoke of those who vanished after daring to call the sea by its true name, the price of curiosity in a world where divinity had no mercy for arrogance. Worship of Djinn was never institutional. It was personal, intimate, bound to daily survival. The people believed that unseen spirits shared their world not as outsiders, but as neighbors. The desert silence, they said, was full of listening ears. Figures like the Marid reminded them that worship was not submission, but negotiation. One did not kneel to the Djinn as to gods, but conversed with them as equals, pleading for coexistence rather than dominance. This delicate dialogue carried into oral tradition through poems, blessings, and tales that explain natural calamities as expressions of Djinn displeasure. Fear shaped these rituals as much as faith. The Djinn's moods were unpredictable, especially those of the Marid, whose essence was both fluid and imperious. Communities near the sea adhered to strict taboos. It was forbidden to wash blood in sacred coves, to spill oil upon still waters, or to cast nets under a full moon. Such acts were believed to offend the Marid and stir the currents into deadly tempests. Children were warned never to skip stones across tide pools, since the ripples might strike the eye of a sleeping Djinn. These beliefs, though wrapped in superstition, reinforced an early ecology of respect toward its volatile order, a law the Marid embodied perfectly. When Islam spread across Arabia, the Djinn were absorbed into the new spiritual framework, their roles redefined but never erased. The Quran acknowledged their existence, presenting them as intelligent, morally accountable beings created from smokeless fire. The faithful were warned that the Djinn, like humans, lived in communities, worshipped and erred. The Marid, once a figure of worship, became instead a symbol of untamed creation, a reminder that some powers remained under divine governance alone. Even then, old practices endured in quiet corners. Fishermen still whispered invocations before entering the water, their gestures unchanged though their prayers had different names. Sufi mystics, exploring the spiritual boundaries between seen and unseen, reinterpreted the Djinn's presence as allegory. They argued that what humans feared in the Djinn was the reflection of their own desires, uncontrolled, luminous, and dangerous. To commune with a spirit like the Marid was, to them, a journey inward, a confrontation with pride masquerading as holiness. Their rituals replaced offerings of fish and incense with discipline and meditation, each breath becoming a tide, each heartbeat echoing the pulse of divine order. In their writings, the Marid represented not chaos, but unity, the moment when water recognizes itself as ocean. Still, outside the mystic circles, older customs survived beneath new names. In villages from Yemen to the Maghreb, the boundaries between religious devotion and inherited ritual blurred. Women poured the first drops of water from their wells onto the ground as an offering to any spirit listening below. Travelers placed pebbles in small piles by desert roadsides to honor unseen protectors. Ships painted an eye upon their prows so the Marid might see through their journey. Each act, however small, was a conversation. Unspoken words exchanged between the human and the infinite. There were darker ceremonies too. In times of famine, desperate leaders turned to sorcerers claiming to know the rites of summoning. They sought the Marid's favor with sacrifices, never human, but symbolic, often a goat's heart bound in silken thread. The rituals were conducted at twilight when the world held its breath between day and night. Those who witnessed the sea rise unnaturally claimed the spirit had answered, but its gifts came poisoned. Crops flourished for a season, Then, rot consume them. Prosperity, born from coercion, always reversed. In the view of the wise, such rituals failed not because the married refused offering, but because the intent behind them broke the sacred balance between exchange and reverence. Across centuries, the core of Djinn culture remained unchanged: respect through equilibrium. Humanity's fear kept it cautious. Its faith kept it connected. The married stood as the ultimate embodiment of that balance, untouchable, yet responsive to sincerity. When taught rightly, every ritual served not to command, but to remember humanity's place within it. Even now, in a modern world lit by neon instead of fire, echoes of those rites survive. The gentle pause before entering the sea, the moment's silence amid a storm, the whispered prayer before a long journey. All of these trace their lineage back to that ancient understanding. The worship of the married never truly ended. It simply evolved into quiet gestures of awe. In the end, fear and worship were never opposites in the culture of the Djinn. They were twin expressions of communion, the acknowledgement that all life exists in dialogue with the unseen. The married, ruler of waves and will, continues to hover in that dialogue, both protector and peril. Its rituals endure not because of religion, but because reverence itself demands continuity. Through time and tide, the ancient pact remains. Approach with humility, leave with wonder. The sea listens still. Among the vast pantheon of supernatural beings that populate myth and legend, few command the same mixture of awe and reverence as the married. Yet to understand its stature, one must measure it against others that share its invisible dominion. Power, in mythology, is seldom absolute. It is contextual, shaped by culture, geography, and the fears that sculpt human imagination. When we compare the married to creatures born of fire, air, and shadow from across civilizations, we uncover not only striking parallels, but also the profound uniqueness that defines its presence. The Marid, as both storm and silence, stands unmatched in its symbiosis of beauty and terror. Within the hierarchy of the Djinn itself, the Marid is supreme. The Ifrit lurks just below, its ferocity shaped by uncontrollable flame. Where the Ifrit embodies rebellion and destruction, the Marid represents mastery and eternity. The Ifrit devours, the Marid endures. One burns briefly, leaving ruin in its wake, while the other moves through centuries, shaping coastlines and civilizations through tides that both destroy and renew. Their relationship mirrors that of fire and water, antagonistic, yet mutually dependent. In the oldest Arabic traditions, it was said that the Ifrit's rage was merely the echo of a married's patience denied, a spark born from suppressed storm. The Shaitan, often confused with devils in broader lore, holds a different dynamic with the Marid. While both embody forms of opposition, their powers diverge in. The Shaitan's dominion is psychological, rooted in deceit and temptation. Its strength lies in misdirection, turning faith into arrogance and virtue into vanity. The Marid, by contrast, does not seduce or corrupt. It overwhelms. Its influence is undeniable rather than persuasive. If the Shaitan whispers, the Marid roars. If one worms into human hearts, the other encompasses the very air one breathes. Philosophers of the old courts describe this distinction as the difference between fear of self and fear of cosmos, internal chaos versus elemental majesty. To look beyond the horizons of the Middle East, parallels abound. In the deep myths of Greece, the god Poseidon mirrors the Marid's temperament. He too governs the seas, dispensing both protection and vengeance with the turn of a tide. Yet where Poseidon acts as deity, bound to divine hierarchy. The married remains independent, subject to no pantheon nor moral order. It exists outside the constructs of worship, a primal consciousness that predates devotion itself. The ancient bards spoke of Poseidon's trident-breaking ships. The desert poets told of the marid's hand dissolving them without touch. Both command water, but the marid reflects its formlessness more faithfully. In Indian mythology, comparisons often arise between the marid and the nagas, serpentine beings inhabiting rivers and oceans. Like the marid, the nagas can bless with rain or curse with flood, dwelling in magnificent underwater realms inaccessible to mortals. Yet their duality carries distinctly moral undertones. They guard treasures, avenge insult, and serve divine balance. The marid, by contrast, remains morally neutral. It guards not gold, but the principle of equilibrium itself. Where the nagas speak of duty, the marid embodies inevitability. The naga presides within a divine order. The marid is the order. In Norse tradition, one might compare it to Jörmungandr, the world serpent encircling Midgard. Both represent the vast unknowable power of the sea, entities so immense that comprehension falters before them. Jörmungandr signifies the end of time, destined to rise and drown the world in its final moment. The marid, however, knows no conclusion. It is timeless, bound to cyclical continuity rather than apocalypse. Where the world serpent's awakening signals destruction, the marid's awakening heralds transformation. In their difference lies the philosophical divide between Western finality and Eastern recurrence. One dies to renew, the other lives endlessly in renewal. From Celtic tradition flows the memory of the Selkies and the Kelpie, the shape-shifting spirits of the northern seas. Their beauty lures mortals into watery graves, their gentle forms concealing fatal intent. These beings, though far removed from the deserts of Arabia, share with the marid the paradox of allure and danger. The sea, across all mythologies, remains the ultimate metaphor for the unknown. Every culture projects into it both dreams and fears, and the marid, more than any other entity, embodies that dual inheritance. Yet unlike the Kelpie's deceit or the Selkie's longing, the marid harbours no emotion. Its attraction is not intentional, but elemental. Beauty is its condition, not its disguise. Turning toward the air, one might compare the marid to the Japanese tengu, spirits of storm and mountain wind. They too are fierce yet instructive, destroyers that shape humility in mortals who encounter them. The tengu's whirlwind teaches discipline through chaos. The marid's current teaches surrender through awe. Both reflect as educating cruelty, yet one seeks to refine humankind, while the other simply exists. The distinction reveals the marid's distance from human morality. Its indifference inspires not repentance, but reverence, a realization of scale rather than of guilt. Across regions of sub-Saharan Africa, tales of the Mamiwata persist, spirits of the water who grant wealth and knowledge in exchange for devotion. They are seductive and perilous, granting prosperity only to take sanity or life in return. In them, one sees fragments of the marid's essence refracted through cultural expression. The sanctity of water, the cost of gift, and the impossibility of ownership. Yet, the Mamiwata enforces devotion. The marid never requests worship. It ignores prayers as easily as it heeds them. It is the divine unbound, merciful and merciless according to balance, not favor. Even in the Abrahamic sphere, where angels and demons serve as cosmic opposites, the marid remains unclassifiable. It defies alignment with good or evil. It belongs to the pre-moral era of existence. Its lore predates the wars of heaven and hell. Some scholars once speculated that the awe it inspires resembles that of the seraphim, the burning angels of unending praise. But where the seraphim glorify order, the Marid enforces equilibrium through consequence. It carries divine intent without belonging to the divine hierarchy. In that solitude lies its incomparable strength. When viewed against all these beings, fireborn Djinn, avenging gods, serpents, and sea spirits, the Marid's singularity emerges. Every culture has sought to name the forces that humble humanity, yet in the Marid, the concept reaches its most refined form. It is power purified of personality, intelligence, without agenda. Its destructive storms serve the same purpose as its calm waters: preservation through motion. No wrath, no affection, only the balance of being itself. Thus, in comparing it to others, we find that the Marid stands apart, not because it is stronger, but because it is truer. It is the ocean's memory, the first metaphor, the eternal witness to creation's cycle. Gods fall, spirits fade, monsters die, but the tide remains. In every myth where humanity seeks to name the infinite, the Marid waits beneath the surface, unshaken, unchanged, its silence filling the space between thunder and word. Legends are rivers. They change course as they travel, carrying the memory of their source, but reshaping it with every landscape they pass. So it is with the Marid, whose old voice once rumbled through stories told under the stars, now whispered in the flicker of screens and pages. What was once fearsome reverence has become fascination, filtered through centuries of storytelling. The Marid has drifted from sacred tide to symbol, from terrifying sovereignty to fantasy's charming enigma. Yet even within its modern reinvention, traces of its ancient essence remain, echoes of the primordial sea that birthed it. The transformation of the Marid's image began long before the age of cinema or digital culture. Through translations and retellings of the 1001 Nights, the oceanic sovereigns softened. Western interpreters, eager to romanticize the East, recast it as the genie, a servant bound to obedience, cheerful and wish-granting. The dread that once surrounded its name dissolved into laughter and spectacle. Lamps replaced sealed jars, and prayers turned into commands. The elemental monarch was molded into entertainment, its power translated into a metaphor for human greed rather than divine balance. This reimagining was the first step in the long distortion of its image. In time, the Marid's wrath was rewritten as wonder. 19th century literature portrayed it as an exotic curiosity, an emblem of mystery rather than menace. Painters in Europe imagined the Djinn with flowing robes, shimmering skin, and expressions of melancholy nobility. Scholars debated whether the genie's three wishes represented past, present, and future, or mind, body, and spirit, rarely suspecting that the original concept bore no such optimism. Even in these reinventions, the allure of the unknown persisted. The Marid's transformation into a benevolent figure reflected more about humanity's longing for control than its respect for mystery. The sea was no longer feared. It was to be conquered, domesticated, mirrored in man's imagination. The arrival of film and animation deepened this transformation. When the genie leapt from ancient manuscripts into moving art, its grandeur shimmered anew, but its terror faded entirely. It laughed, it danced, it sang. Centuries of reverence were replaced by humor and spectacle. The Marid's once chilling duality, its mercy and destruction, was distilled into whimsy. Yet behind that performance lingered remnants of ancient awe. Each time audiences witness the genie emerge in light and smoke, they unknowingly echoed the dramas of old summoners, calling the married from the depths, their astonishment preserved in collective memory through another illusion. In the modern era, the married has re-emerged not as myth, but as archetype, a reflection of humanity's evolving relationship with power. In fiction and fantasy, the genie becomes a symbol of technology, artificial intelligence, or the consequences of unchecked desire. The wish-granting entity now resides within machines instead of lamps, constrained by code instead of seals. Writers and creators continually rediscover the ancient lesson of the married, even when unaware of its source. That power, without equilibrium, is ruinous. What was once the warning of sailors and mystics has become the philosophical question of our age. Can humanity command what it does not understand without being consumed by it? Despite its taming in Western imagination, the married still holds its sovereignty within Middle Eastern and North African storytelling. In local tales whispered across coastal towns or written into contemporary literature, it remains vast, indifferent, and uncontainable. Modern storytellers invoke it as metaphor for freedom, identity, and natural force, a reminder that the oceans of tradition cannot be captured in foreign bottles. Some contemporary poets reclaim its image as protest against simplification. They describe the married not as servant, but as storm-resisting ownership, reclaiming its role as guardian of balance. Through these voices, the married breathes again with its original depth, neither villain nor jester, but eternal. In visual media, depictions have also shifted toward the elemental and the sublime. Art installations and digital designs portray the married as an entity woven from liquid light, its form suggested rather than defined. It becomes symbol of vast intelligence, an ecological consciousness, or even the embodiment of the planet's memory. This resurgence marks a notable return to its ancient essence. In an age facing climate anxiety and rediscovered reverence for natural forces, the married resonates anew. It once ruled the seas of myth. Now it whispers in the metaphors of modernity, reminding humanity that no technology, however advanced, can rewrite the logic of. The internet era, filled with shared myths and reimagined folklore, has only expanded the married's presence. Artists across continents collaborate to visualize it, blending tradition with innovation. Some return to its role as wish-giver, but twist the story. Each granted wish accelerates global imbalance, turning comfort into decay. Others paint it as collective consciousness of the ocean, witnessing humanity's pollution and greed. In all these forms, its duality endures, beauty as prelude to reckoning. Even stripped of ritual, the married continues to teach, shaping itself through each generation's fears and hopes, just as water shapes the earth. Perhaps the most profound modern interpretation of the married lies not in art, but in awareness. The philosophical undercurrent of its myth reminds us that power must coexist with humility. The married's dominion over water mirrors the delicate equation of existence itself: creation and destruction, promise and peril, intertwined. Our modern desire to command the elements, to mold worlds through and technology, repeats the oldest pattern of mythic ambition. Each innovation, each act of mastery, echoes the fisherman's hand unscrewing a sealed jar, unaware that the sea listens. The married, in myth or metaphor, cautions us that control is an illusion and balance is the only truth. The journey of the married from sacred myth to cultural symbol traces humanity's changing intimacy with the unknown. Once a deity feared in silence, it has become a companion of imagination, guiding stories that bridge mysticism and modernity. Yet its essence has not faded. It has simply evolved, hiding beneath the surface of new languages and screens. The same awe that drove sailors to whisper to the deep now drives artists, coders, and thinkers to create. Through every transformation, the Marid endures as the embodiment of boundless potential, ancient water beneath the mirror of the modern world, waiting for those who dare to listen to its eternal tide. Those who speak of the Marid often do so with reverence, but few remember that awe alone has never been protection. To encounter the Marid, or even to drift near the threshold of its dominion, is to enter a place where natural law bends under ancient will. Yet even in that alien realm, there exist rules, laws older than humanity, written not in ink or speech, but in spirit and tide. The wise have long whispered them as survival's gospel, secret knowledge for those brave or foolish enough to walk where gods once swam. To ignore these laws is to vanish into silence, unremembered even by the ocean itself. The first law is humility. Speak little, for words weigh heavily beneath the water. The Marid's world functions through resonance, and breath, being air, is intrusion in that domain. Legends warn that excessive speech angers the unseen currents. Those who spoke in arrogance found their lungs filled with salt before a single word was finished. The Marid listens not to language, but to intention. Silence, therefore, is the only safe greeting. Those who understand this truth approach not as conquerors, but as guests, offering stillness in exchange for passage. The second law governs offerings. Unlike the fiery Ifrit or the cunning Shaitan, the Marid cannot be bought by gold, jewels, or flesh. Material offerings dissolve in its waters, meaningless before its vast indifference. Only purity holds value, acts done without desire for return. In older myths, travelers who poured clear water into the sea before prayer were said to survive storms that swallowed greater ships. The act symbolized surrender rather than tribute. To give to the Marid is to acknowledge its sovereignty, not to seek favor. It responds to balance, not bribery. The third law is respect for reflection. Water is the Marid's mirror, a living eye through which it perceives both mortals and worlds. Never gaze upon your reflection at night near open water, for the sea's surface becomes a window then, not a barrier. To stare too long is to invite recognition. The Marid's perception is reciprocal. Travelers who dared to meet their mirrored gaze often saw not their own faces, but shifting forms of something vast perceiving them in return. If your reflection moves when you do not, flee. The water remembers, and remembrance there is a form of claim. The fourth law speaks of names. Names are oaths in the realm of spirits, and the Marid treats them as coordinates of existence. To utter your full name aloud while standing on a shore at night is to forfeit ownership of it. The Marid, if listening, can weave that sound into current and foam, binding your will to its flow. Wanderers who forgot this law were said to lose their identities to the sea. Their memories dissolved until only their forms remained, echoes drifting between waves. For this reason, old sailors took pseudonyms during voyages, names light enough to cast away, but never so vulnerable as their true ones. The fifth law concerns direction. Within the Marid's realm, the compass deceives, for north and south dissolve under mirrored horizons. Orientation depends not on landmarks, but on rhythm. Those who learn to travel by pulse, matching their heartbeats to the rhythm of the tide, could find their way home. The pulse, when steady, harmonizes with the world's frequency. When panicked, it draws predators. This was more than superstition. Water magnifies intention, and fear acts as signal. The ancients claimed that when a Marid hunts, it listens for unstable hearts. Courage, not hope, is therefore the truest map. The sixth law is restraint. To drink seawater while lost at sea is to accept death. To grasp at the Marid's power is much the same. Those who sought its strength through coercion discovered that elemental energy poisons those unfit to wield it. The Marid's currents mirror the mind of its summoner. A turbulent heart births violent waves. A calm spirit calls still waters. Hence, all invocations concluded with meditation instead of command. The sea obeys only those who mimic its patience. Impulse is rebellion in a realm where motion is sacred. The seventh law warns of the lures of beauty. The Marid's realm dazzles the senses, laced with colors unseen in sunlight and harmonies felt, rather than heard. Yet these wonders are trials, designed to test attachment. To chase what pleases the mind or eye is to stray from the path of balance. The old chants describe illusions conjured to measure purity. Pearls glowing at unreachable depths. Voices resembling lost loved ones. Lights that dance in time with longing. All serve one purpose: to distract. The only safe passage through the Marid's domain is through indifference to marvels. Those who love beauty more than truth are claimed by it. The eighth law is memory. Time flows differently under the Marid's influence. Moments stretch and collapse like tides. To remember sunlight or the feel of ground beneath one's feet anchors the mortal spirit to the world above. Forgetting invites dissolution. Ancient mariners carried tokens, a pebble, a ribbon, a feather, not for superstition, but as memory's tether. When awareness fades, one must look, touch, and recall. The Marid devours what is unanchored. Memory is survival. Forgetfulness is surrender. The ninth law protects travelers crossing storms. It dictates never to curse the sea nor offer defiance when calamity nears. Words of resistance turn into invitation. Instead, one must whisper gratitude amid chaos. This balance bewilders those who seek logic in emotion. But to the Marid, acknowledgement is alignment. Fury invites protection. Those who survived shipwrecks often reported speaking blessings to the storm before its height, calming their fear by praising what could destroy them. Gratitude tempers destruction, for the sea spares those who remind it of creation. The 10th and final law is the law of return. No matter what one witnesses or gains within the Marid's realm, treasures, visions, or knowledge, one must give something back upon leaving. This is not barter, but equilibrium. The Marid's world sustains itself through exchange, not theft. Travelers who emerged and kept their gain without offering reflection or silence would find themselves haunted by echoes. The sound of water where none should flow, the sense of being observed by unseen eyes. The debt remains until acknowledged. The wise, upon surviving their encounter, would pour water into dust and whisper, "As above, so below," re-establishing harmony between realms. To follow these 10 laws is not to command the Marid, but to coexist with it. They remind humanity that order exists even within chaos, a structure ancient and invisible. Those who endured the Marid's realm returned changed, not with riches, but with reverence. They spoke softly of the ocean's vast thought, of the patience in its silence. The laws, passed through generations, endure not as superstition, but as philosophy. For they teach that survival, whether under waves or within life itself, depends on surrender to balance. And balance, in the eyes of the Marid, is the one true prayer. Every civilization has gazed into water and seen itself reflected. In that mirrored surface lie both truth and distortion. depending on how the viewer perceives it. The Marid, sovereign of the depths, has long served as more than myth. It is metaphor made sentient, embodying the forces that move within the human condition. To speak of the Marid is to speak of conflict, longing, and transformation. Its tides are not limited to oceans. They rise within every soul that contends with its own depth. The Marid has always personified the human relationship with power. To fishermen and kings alike, it represented the allure of dominance, the dream of controlling what should remain untamed. Yet its stories teach that power, when seized, consumes. The chain that binds the Marid is never forged by magic alone, but by arrogance. In this sense, the myth is timeless. Every era produces its own conjurers seeking mastery over or destiny. The warning of the Marid is not against ambition, but against imbalance, reminding humanity that dominion without understanding leads to drowning. The sea, in these interpretations, becomes an arena for human struggle. Sailors risk life to harvest its wealth. Scholars use it to map the unknown, and empires attempt to carve borders across its moving plains. The Marid embodies the futility of such endeavors. Its realm rejects ownership. It belongs to none but itself. Thus, the myth invites reflection on humanity's endless contest with chaos and the futility of conquest over forces that predate civilization. The Marid's roar echoes in the human need to possess and the grief that follows possession. Much of the Marid's symbolism resides in the duel of freedom and restraint. Stories describe it as both boundless and imprisoned. Master of the ocean, yet captive in the lamp or jar of human design. This paradox speaks deeply to the human experience of freedom. Humanity dreams of liberation, but often cages itself in the pursuit of it. The Marid's imprisonment mirrors the self-inflicted boundaries of greed, fear, and pride. Those who command the spirit reflect those who confine themselves through control. It is a tragic irony that what we seek to master most resembles what we fear to face within ourselves. Scholars have long noted that the Marid's legends mark collective anxieties. In eras of drought, floods, or political upheaval, its image surged across poetry and prayer. It became the voice of the world's imbalance, the embodiment of desperation and judgment. But it also represented hope. If the Marid could calm storms, humans reasoned, then so could redemption soothe the turbulence of the soul. In this sense, the myth straddles despair and faith, uniting them in a single, fluid language. The same sea that drowns also sustains. The same spirit that punishes heals. The motif of the wish, the central element of the genie folklore, is equally symbolic. The idea of bending the cosmos to will reflects the deepest human yearning, the desire to matter. Yet, in every telling, the wish becomes burden. The Marid grants what is asked, but transforms the result into revelation. This is not cruelty, it is pedagogy. Each granted wish unfolds the truth that every want carries its opposite within it. Wealth births isolation. Love anchors obligation. Peace dulls progress. The Marid's gift exposes the cost of desire, turning material requests into moral lessons. There are those who see the Marid as its conscience, the planet's breath rendered mythical. It tests humanity's arrogance the same way storms test coasts. Modern interpretations often connect it with environmental reflection. The oceans, once revered and feared, are now drained, polluted, and heated by human hands. If the Marid symbolizes equilibrium, then in this age, it cries out through rising tides and violent weather. Each flood, each drought, can be read as myth reborn, as manifestation of that ancient voice reminding us that harmony once broken must be restored. Humanity may have dismissed the divine, but it has not escaped the law the Marid embodies: balance or ruin. At a psychological level, the Marid becomes an emblem of the unconscious mind. The sea has long been a symbol of buried memory and emotion, the place where things lost or denied reside. To face the Marid is to confront one's deepest fears and desires, to wade into personal depth before the self's own reflection devours it. In dreams, water both invites and threatens, just as introspection promises both clarity and peril. Those who reach too far beneath the surface, seeking answers without preparation, risk fragmentation, the drowning of identity in its own vastness. Yet to refuse the journey is to live unawakened. Artists and thinkers have often drawn upon the Marid to explore the weight of creation itself. The act of making a poem, an invention, a world, is analogous to summoning. The creator calls forth something powerful and other, something that can both grant and destroy. Inspiration becomes a tidal force, beautiful, vital, but dangerous if uncontained. Many creators liken the moment of conception to opening the lamp, releasing a brilliance that cannot easily be returned to silence. The wisdom of the myth endures, warning that what we summon demands stewardship. Whether the summoned entity is art or power, it remembers its origin in chaos. Even love finds itself bound within the Marid's reflection. Folktales tell of humans who fell for spirits of the deep, romances as radiant as they were doomed. These stories depict love as both salvation and dissolution. To love a Marid is to surrender to depth, to allow another being to shape one's destiny entirely. The lesson persists beyond romance. Any devotion so total risks drowning. The Marid's tenderness exists, but it is the tenderness of the sea, limitless, shifting, and fatal if clung to without respect. The myth of the Marid endures because it transforms with humanity. In every age, it echoes our greatest questions. How can power remain pure? Can knowledge coexist with humility? Where do desire and destruction meet? The answers differ, but the rhythm remains constant. For as long as humans chase meaning beyond their reach, they will hear the ocean answering back, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in thunder. It reminds us that we are reflections of the same element we fear. The Marid, in truth, has never been beneath the sea. It dwells within us, patient, eternal, waiting for one more wish, one more storm, one more lesson to unfold. Among the many secrets whispered within the dim chambers of ancient Sufi mystics, none carried heavier silence than the question of the Djinn. Their existence, acknowledged in sacred texts, stood at the trembling border between faith and fear. To the mystics, the Djinn represented the shadow of creation, a manifestation of divine possibility, unbound by mortal limitation. And among them, the Marid was the most enigmatic, an echo of the Creator's power reflected in the boundless sea. To study it was to risk madness, for its truth could both illuminate and consume. In Islamic mysticism, every being was seen as a reflection of divine order. Angels represented obedience, humans embodied choice, and the Djinn symbolized freedom untethered, pure will without boundary. The Sufis believed that understanding creation demanded acknowledgement of all three forces, for each expressed an aspect of the divine. The Marid, forged of water and lightless flame, exemplified perfection through motion. It was said that in its currents, divine knowledge flowed untranslated, too vast to fit into human reason. The mystic's task was not to control it, but to glimpse, for a moment, the sacred symmetry of its existence. Sufi masters often describe the Djinn through metaphor rather than doctrine. Jalal al-Din Rumi spoke of unseen spirits as mirrors of human intention. their form shaped by purity or pride. The Marid, he implied, was the ocean of consciousness itself, where the drop of self dissolves into the whole. To merge with such an essence was to transcend individuality, to become instrument of divine will, carried by currents of eternal wisdom. But only the most disciplined seekers dared such proximity, for union with water demands surrender. The unprepared mind, unable to distinguish reflection from source, breaks beneath the weight of comprehension. To the mystics, the Marid's oceanic realm was not a place but a state, a dimension entered through meditation, ritual fasting, and recitation. They believed that within the stillness between heartbeats lay a doorway to the unseen. Crossing that threshold required equilibrium, body purified, heart untainted, mind emptied of want. Those who succeeded described visions of infinite horizon, layered light that breathed, voices like tides reciting verses none could remember upon waking. Some returned with insights that changed their communities forever. Others never returned at all, swallowed not by punishment, but by absorption. Their essence dissolved into divine presence. The scholars who guarded orthodoxy warned against these pursuits, calling them dangerous flirtations with forbidden knowledge. The Prophet himself cautioned that humanity was not designed to see the unseen. Yet for mystics, such warnings confirmed the sanctity of the quest. Forbidden knowledge was never evil in itself. They taught, but perilous because it demanded transformation. The price of knowing divine mystery was the death of ego. To encounter the Marid in contemplation was to feel one's barriers collapse, to sense one's insignificance before absolute magnitude. Many could not bear the surrender. Mystical texts from regions like Andalusia and Persia often blended allegory and revelation when speaking of the Djinn. The Marid appeared as both an external entity and an inner symbol. A verse from a lost manuscript described it as the sea that dreams itself through man. To the initiates, this meant that divine truth flowed through all beings, yet only in rare moments did it see its reflection. The Marid, as embodiment of that reflection, became the teacher of humility. It reminded seekers that enlightenment was not acquisition of power, but dissolution into balance. The ocean does not hold the wave, it becomes the wave, and therein lies its immortality. Mystics debated whether the Djinn possessed the capacity for enlightenment. Some believed that even beings of fire and air could ascend through remembrance of God. Others argued that their freedom severed them from the discipline required for salvation. The Marid, they agreed, stood apart. It needed no ascension, for it was already fragment of cosmic harmony. Its knowledge, however, was inaccessible to speech. To inquire into it directly was forbidden not by law, but by mercy. The divine, they said, veils truth to protect the seeker from its blaze. Tales persist of Sufi saints who allegedly communed with the Marid's essence during trance. One such account speaks of a wanderer who meditated beside the sea for 40 nights, reciting divine names until his voice matched the rhythm of the waves. On the 41st night, the water rose without wind, forming a column of transparent flame. From within came a voice that said, "All knowledge returns to the sea." The saint was found at dawn, alive but aged by decades, his eyes reflecting tides even in daylight. Whether myth or miracle, the story persisted as parable. Who seeks eternity must accept the erosion of self. The mystics viewed such encounters as trials rather than rewards. To face a being of perfect balance was to confront imbalance within oneself. The Marid did not teach through speech, but through mirroring. Each seeker saw only what they carried. The proud saw disdain. The humble saw serenity. In this way, the Marid served as divine instrument, reflecting truth despite itself. The ocean, after all, holds every shadow, yet remains pure. Those who recognized this paradox understood the core of mysticism. The divine does not punish, it reveals. In later centuries, as Sufism extended across continents, scholars began to reinterpret these teachings in the language of philosophy. The Marid ceased to be viewed as a literal spirit and became symbol of universal consciousness, a metaphor for knowledge contained within creation itself. Yet even under rational light, the old warning survived. Mystics continued to teach that the search for ultimate truth required annihilation of self. Whether one called it the Marid, divine wisdom, or infinite awareness, the final encounter was the same. The wave realizing it is the sea. The forbidden knowledge of the Djinn endures not in libraries, but in stillness, in the quiet between thought and breath. It is wisdom that cannot be written, only remembered. The mystics understood that to name it is to lose it, for truth resists form as water resists grasp. The Marid remains the eternal metaphor for that mystery, unseen but undeniable, feared but worshipped, distant yet dwelling in every heart that dares to perceive the infinite. Its lesson, whispered across ages, endures in 4 words. Knowledge without surrender destroys, but surrender without fear transforms. In every corner of the modern world, where tradition fades beneath neon light, there remains a quiet persistence of the old stories. The Marid, once summoned in hushed prayers and waves of incense, now surfaces through literature, cinema, and whispered superstition. Though ancient language no longer defines it, the archetype endures, altered but undefeated. Humanity, it seems, cannot entirely forget the sea's consciousness, nor the mirror it offers to the restless soul. As long as we gaze into the moving surface of water, we continue a dialogue that began long before memory, a conversation between fear and wonder. The Marid's survival in modern imagination is peculiar because it no longer needs belief to exist. Myths fade when dismissed, but certain ones evolve instead, reclaiming relevance through metaphor. Today, the Marid stands for vastness itself, uncontrollable, enigmatic, and indifferent to power. Oceanographers may speak in terms of currents and salinity, yet the mind continues to hear its voice in the crash of waves. Psychologists, too, glimpse its spectre in human behavior, associating it with the unconscious forces that rise when reason falters. Whether described through art or intuition, the essence remains unchanged. The Marid represents everything humanity cannot master. Part of its endurance comes from its universality. Water connects every culture, and so does the mystery of control and surrender that the Marid personifies. In folklore, it served as a reminder of humility toward. In our age, it speaks to the peril of dominance without reflection. The same arrogance that once led kings to summon storms now manifests in technology and extraction. The myth reawakens when reality echoes its lessons. When oceans rise, when storms defy prediction, when balance demands a reckoning, each catastrophe feels strangely personal, as if the old sea spirit were stirring again, not as punishment, but as equilibrium awakening. Despite this ominous resonance, fascination eclipses fear. Artists from across the world weave the Marid into their creations, painters shaping abstract tides, musicians layering sound upon sound to mimic its immensity, writers conjuring its image as both ally and adversary. In digital art, the Marid often appears as a luminescent being, fluid, genderless, transcendent, symbolizing transformation in an age defined by uncertainty. These depictions maintain its dignity and vastness, returning to the purity of its myth before distortion turned it into the caricature of a playful genie. Through them, the Marid regains its solemnity and reclaims its throne among symbols of awe. Yet fascination carries a shadow. The line between homage and hubris remains fragile. the same curiosity that drives creation often tempts imitation. Some spiritual movements and occult communities claim to summon Djinn anew, adapting rituals from fragmented traditions. Though mostly theatrical, such efforts echo the millennia-old desire to breach the veil between worlds. The allure is the same: to touch eternity, to hold conversation with what lies beyond comprehension. But like their ancient predecessors, many forget that the Marid does not answer in language, it answers in consequence. Contact with the infinite has always been less revelation than reflection, revealing not what is divine, but what is human. The persistence of the Marid also reveals how deeply humanity craves mystery in an overexposed age. We live within constant illumination, yet stories of shadow endure. Myths like the Marids remind us of wonder in a world drained by explanation. They reintroduce reverence, an emotion often mistaken for fear. To revere is not to cower, it is to recognize vastness without need of conquest. When we hear thunder roll over the sea or witness waves devour man-made walls, part of us senses the ancient equilibrium reassert itself. The story continues because, in essence, it is no story at all. It is the language of retelling itself through each generation's imagination. Modern philosophy has even adopted the Marid's paradox as metaphor for the human condition. Thinkers speak of the oceanic feeling, the state of self-loss before something immeasurably larger. It describes the same encounter ancient sailors named divine. The Marid, then, becomes shorthand for transcendence, the dissolution of ego within immensity. Technology may simulate its awe through screens, but the real experience still belongs to silence, to standing before the horizon's endless divide. In that moment, one understands what the ancients meant when they said that to meet the Marid is to remember one's origin. Cinema and literature have also reshaped its legacy into narrative form. The genie of wish-making has evolved once more, now serving as symbol of moral choice. Filmmakers use the Marid archetype to question whether human desire deserves fulfillment, while novelists employ it to explore climate guilt or spiritual hunger. Each medium, consciously or not, circles back to the same truth. The Marid will never vanish because it is not bound to a single belief system. It is an idea, a mirror polished by countless hands, reflecting the fear of insignificance and the beauty of surrender. Even in places far from the desert or sea, echoes of its myth persist in language itself. We still describe deep emotion as tidal, change as wave, isolation as drowning. These metaphors trace their ancestry to the Marid's realm, where emotion and once shared breath. The words remind us that myth and meaning never parted. They simply evolved in syntax. The language of the water god became the language of the soul. Through vocabulary, the old spirit survives, every whisper of fluidity or reflection carrying memory of its ancient presence. What the Marid leaves behind, after centuries of transformation, is not a singular warning, but a living philosophy. It teaches acceptance of duality, fear and fascination, order and chaos, creation and decay. The Marid's legend has shaped modern thought without demanding belief. In an age drained of certainty, it restores balance by asking ancient questions anew. What if power serves harmony rather than mastery? What if awe is the highest form of understanding? These are the tides it continues to stir within human consciousness. The Marid's legacy endures because it reflects the truths humanity cannot outgrow. It is the salt in our stories, the pulse beneath progress, the reminder that the infinite will not be caged by comprehension. Its fear, once religious, has become existential. Its fascination, once mystical, now philosophical. And so the myth sails on, carried by the same current it once commanded. Whether we name it myth, metaphor, or memory, The Marid remains the sea's breath within us, a vastness we keep trying to define, even as it silently defines us in return. Every story must end where it began, with silence, with awe, with the unspoken pull toward the unseen. The legend of the Marid, from desert shore to sacred verse, has carried us through oceans of myth and thought. Yet even after all these words, the truth remains elusive, shimmering like heat above water. The Marid is not only a creature of faith or fear, but the voice that bridges humanity and the unfathomable. Its realm lies not beyond the horizon, but within the spaces between moments, waiting for one final glance of understanding before the tide withdraws. As we close this journey, imagine standing once more at the threshold where water meets land. The wind tastes of salt and memory. The sea moves beneath a moon untouched by time, and every wave seems to breathe with purpose. You realize that what you have witnessed through these stories is not fantasy, but reflection. The Marid is the memory of reverence, the instinct that tells us to pause before the vast, to kneel not in submission, but in recognition. To cross the veil is not to leave the world behind, but to remember that the world was never divided to begin with. Throughout centuries, the Marid's legend has endured because it speaks to the oldest paradox of existence, the desire to touch the infinite while fearing its embrace. Humanity has always built walls against wonder, only to tear them down again in search of meaning. The myth of the Marid challenges those walls, reminding us that faith and curiosity are twin currents of the same stream. To understand is to dissolve. To worship is to become. In its realm, boundaries fade until even knowledge itself becomes a form of surrender. It invites us not to command power, but to coexist with it. The Marid's ocean is a mirror to our eternal restlessness. Every age confronts its own reflection there. Once in the shimmer of torchlight across waves, now in the glow of cities reflected upon polluted shores. The fear remains unchanged, only the names differ. Where our ancestors sought divine favor through offerings, we now seek mastery through technology and ambition. Yet the water watches, patient. It has no judgment, only persistence. The Marid's lesson endures in the rhythm of the tide. It withdraws when grasped too tightly, returning only to those who approach in peace. To cross the veil, then, is to unlearn. It is to rediscover humility, to see the sacred in what endures beyond ownership. The mystics knew this truth, whispering that the sea remembers every voice that once pleaded or prayed along its edge. Their words echo even now in the hush before storms, or in the quiet between breaths. When the heart listens, it hears that same voice, not booming, not commanding, but infinite and low, a pulse that beats beneath the noise of living. The Marid's world is not reached by ships or spells, but by stillness. It opens for those who have finally ceased to demand. Modern life rarely allows space for awe. We chase knowledge without reflection, filling every silence with explanation. But somewhere deep beneath this noise, the Marid waits, the archetype of wonder, the patient tide of understanding that rises each time we tire of our own certainty. Every act of genuine creation, every moment of compassion, every pause before beauty is a crossing of the veil. We recognize ourselves in the boundless when we let the world be mysterious again. Perhaps that is the Marid's final invitation, not to believe, but simply to feel what belief once meant. There is poetry in the idea that the sea itself remembers us. Each generation adds its whisper to the endless dialogue between humanity and water. The myth of the Marid ensures we are never the first to wonder, never the last to listen. Its form may shift, from storm to symbol, from deity to metaphor, but its presence endures as long as wonder survives. As we tell and retell its legend, we are not merely recounting an ancient myth, we are preserving the language of reverence. For every story about the married is a confession of humanity's need to believe that something greater listens back. And so we return to the shore where this odyssey began. The air trembles with possibility, and the veil between worlds shimmers once more. It is thinner than thought, woven from salt, breath, and memory. You can almost see the horizon breathe, as if the ocean itself were aware of your gaze. What lies beyond it is not fantasy, but continuity, the reminder that myth and existence are tides of the same sea. When you step back from the water's edge, you do not leave the married behind. It leaves with you, folded into the rhythm of your pulse and the weight of your wonder. The married's legacy is not confined to texts or temples. It lives in the questions that remain unanswered, in the hum of the tide during sleepless nights, in the feeling of being watched by something immense yet benevolent. It is both the voice that cautions against pride and the whisper that urges you to dream. Its duality continues to shape us, teaching that terror and transcendence often share a face. We are all, in some small way, children of that oceanic consciousness, drawn forever toward the mystery that first gave us form, Erst. So, as we part from the legend, remember that the veil does not close. It shifts. The married does not vanish. It observes. Its world, unseen but eternal, surrounds us still in raindrops, rivers, and the slow heartbeat of the planet. To live wisely is to live with awareness of that presence. Let the myth remind us that every act of balance, every breath of gratitude, every step of reverence keeps the veil thin enough for wonder to pass through. And in this passing, the story ends where all sacred journeys do, not in certainty, but in silence. A silence that hums with meaning, vast and familiar. The wind softens, the water stills, and something immense exhales. You realize that the married was never a tale of what dwells beneath the waves, but of what awakens within you when you listen long enough to hear the ocean think. And so, before you turn away, whisper to the horizon as our ancestors once did, "Thank you," and stay. The sea listens.